Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Hash Church, episode 144. Sorry for being a few minutes late there. I was, of course, doing a little research. Not gonna lie, got a little stuck on the research. And now I'm gonna send out the links. Pop that down. I hope everyone's doing well today. I'm just going to, of course, get the links out here. Doing a little bit of research today, trying to find out what companies have been lobbying the Canadian government to shut down dispensaries. And it's a little bit interesting. It's not that easy because a lot of these groups do, they hire a group to do their lobbying for them. And I'm sure we'll end up talking about it a little bit here today. In the meantime, let me make sure I got those links all sent off. Good morning, Etienne.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, Todd. And a rousing fuck Mickey this morning because we lost a good activist this week.
Because fuck Mickey.
Because fuck Mickey, and God bless him, love him, rest in peace.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about him on my Wake and Bake show yesterday. Good morning. Maybe mute your mic there, Johnny B. Good morning, Johnny B. and Skunkman Sam and Todd McCormick, as well as Etienne. And bong rips for Mickey this morning. Another cannabis activist has passed away. I never knew him as a cannabis activist as much as I knew him as an internet troll. And I don't say that as a negative. I just really only knew him as that. And seeing the beautiful, wonderful things that people have said to him, I'm pretty much concerned. I believe that they're not saying it just because he's passed away. The guy actually did some great things and had a lot of people actually loving him. So rest in peace, Mickey. Thanks for the good work that you did in the cannabis industry.
Yeah, Mickey was a pioneer in the edibles here in California, and he was busted and did his time and took his lumps. And he was definitely a troll. He gave people their shit. He was kind of he was a shit stirrer, but he was our shit stirrer. And,
right.
He was never afraid to call everyone and anyone out. I was very fortunate not to be on the shit list, but at the same time, if you were, you received some wrath, and it was usually justifiably so. He didn't just pick on anybody just to pick on anybody.
No.
He found somebody who was doing shit, and he gave you the shit. So I don't know how we'll ever replace somebody like him in our movement. Irreplaceable, but I just want to send out my love to his family and friends.
Absolutely. I saw Debbie Goldsberry and many others just writing really great shit about him. So it was, it's always nice to see when people have nice things to say about people rather than the tossing of them under the bus.
He says waiting for Darren to say bong rip. But he's not in yet.
I don't even see him in the room yet.
Yeah, Darren, get in the room.
Oh, my goodness. How's everyone doing this fine morning?
I'm alive and well.
Well, that's great to hear. We're glad that you're alive and well.
Just doing bong rips. Loving you. Missing you.
Bong rips. Some dabbins? Some dabbins. Wow, chat is moving so fast. That was insane. I looked over at it. It was like.
Well, it wouldn't be dabbing. They got the sift. If it wasn't for you and Sam, I wouldn't be smoking sift every day. So, bong rip, right? Yes.
Well, if it wasn't for you growing your own weed, give yourself a pat on the back, Johnny B.
I love growing my own. I think we should all be doing that. I mean, it just.
Well, I agree.
If you can. You know
I agree.
I was out there this morning and just soaking up the plant's life and just talking to her and just having a great conversation, putting her outside in the sun, you know. It's just one of those things you do when you're a gardener. I was looking at there and he's got plants and flowers and vegetables all around his place. I got hanging baskets and stuff like that. And you get up with the sun just to get those ladies going.
Yeah, yes. Nothing like talking to your plants. You know, how many people here talk to their plants whenever they're working with their plants? Todd's like, I don't talk to my plants. They got work to do.
I ignore them. I give my plants the passive aggressive cold shoulder.
I give them orders is what I do.
Not me, man.
Plant. Please grow plant, please. No, I'm not. I don't think that works as much as love, care, nutrients, air, water. Like I go with those things first.
Well, the Dank Duchess is in the room right now, and she says she does talk to her plants. I think she's saying that. She said me with a smiley face. Hello, welcome. Good morning, Dank Duchess. Good morning, Darren, Mr. D420K.
Bong rip, mother lovers. So we
There you
start
go, Darren.
proper or what? Let's do it.
Oh, you're late, bro. We've already done that whole bong rip mother lubbers thing.
Wait, dude, I was listening.
Ah, fuck! I can't put one over on
Like,
you.
gotta do it, Darren. I was like, get in here.
Bong rip.
Talking about those lovely plants around your house that you have grown on and what you're doing. Grow your own, guys.
Well, on that note, the other day I talked to my mentor, kind of letting the cat out of the bag kind of thing, and I don't know if it'll manifest, but I feel if I talk about it, especially to thousands of people, it'll be more likely to manifest. And my newest dream, my newest manifestation that I'm trying to get going is, thanks to Todd for inviting Forever Flowering greenhouses in here, because I'm still thinking about that greenhouse nonstop, thinking about putting it in behind my house, thinking about getting my mentor, Ron Hickey, to move from his grow in the Kootenays to come out here and take care of the grow. It would be our grow in the backyard here, and just do shows every day with tips from Ron. I mean, the guy he truly knows how to grow great cannabis. I put him up there with a lot of people that I often say he's forgotten more about cannabis than most will ever learn. And so we're looking forward to maybe getting that manifestation in the next couple of months a reality. Build a nice Forever Flowering greenhouse in the backyard, start the project, plant a whole crop of Congolese is what we were thinking of doing, maybe 99 Congo plants. And I just think it would be great just for the social media, for the wake and bakes, for me to be able to hang out with one of my best and oldest friends, mentor, father figure, grandfather figure. So that's sort of something that I'm hoping that's going to happen in the near future, even if the grow itself didn't happen and I just got Ron out here, living out here in my kids' life, in my life. That to me would be a win-win-win. But if the greenhouse happens and the grow happens, well, it's going to be fun. Tell you what, it's going to be fun.
Well, why not?
Well, that's just it. I have a federal license for 99 plants, and I don't have a single plant in the ground. Like, what is wrong with me?
You.
Come on, all you gotta do is write some.
I was like, what?
Bro, that's it, really.
What the fuck?
Think of all the money you can save
Think
if you
about
don't have to buy pot if you just spend a couple $100,000 growing it.
Yeah, no, it's for real. And because Ron and I obviously have no interest in undermining the program and selling the pod as much as we just want to, the value really will be in the sharing of the information, the social media promotions, the photography that I'll be able to get, and all that sort of eye candy. And then for me, really, the real value, I'm not going to lie, is getting to spend time with one of my mentors, man. Like these guys are getting older and older, and I'm getting older and older, and I want to spend as much time as I can. Like, I wish I had 50 plus years to spend with my mentors, let alone the 20 or 30 or 40 that I might be limited to, depending on how long we get to live. Yeah, I know, Tahoe Bird, an unused federal license. Yeah, I know.
Let's just ponder on that for a
That's
second.
nice. I got to go hang out with Rob and all his college buddies yesterday at one of their reunion parties.
Nice. How was that?
It's cool. They're all in their 60s. And it's funny to see all these like raging hippies that are like, professors and all well-to-dos, and they're still such raging hippies. I don't know how to put it, but they're lawyers and they're professors and they're scholars, and it's a cute mix. It shows me that even stoners can grow up to be very productive, successful members of society.
And established. That's the truth right there. There's no doubt about that a stoner, I mean, even the word stoner, it always seems to have this sort of, at least through the prohibition lens, this negative connotation. Although when I hear stoner, I think of more positive things, I'm not going to lie, because I'm a stoner.
Well, we've accepted them with pride, because what else are you going to do? You had to accept your, stoner, badge with honor, because, because of the misinformation, and we realized it so early. So we went out and preached about it and yelled about it and stood on street corners, and people were like, what the fuck are you talking about? Weed? Y'all are high. Yes, we're high. We're just trying to make sure everybody's aware that we're successful and high as well. You're more than welcome to join us along the way if you'd like.
Just be honest. You wanted to get everyone high too.
Everybody's well medicated. I say I'm well medicated. I'm not.
I'm medicated.
I'm a little medicated. Come on. I mean, it's like not about being high. It's about homeostasis.
Are you
balance?
I think that's called highly motivated.
Highly motivated. That's one
Well,
thing.
Oh, and
Everyone in
Sam,
this panel is highly motivated.
Sam with the
Absolutely.
cool posting the other day in Hash Church talking about all these cops stopping searching us after they legalized in various states.
you know what? I gotta say this. After the whole OMA, whatever you guys want to call it, the arguments against and for, it really seems that Todd,
Well, Prop
you
64.
Prop 64, you may have fallen on the right side of things, because I'll tell you, not a single person who argued against it is continuing to. I haven't seen them post about, look at this bullshit. The cops aren't even searching us anymore, and a bunch of people got let off that had charges. That's bullshit, man. I need $300 a gram for my shit. It's like, sorry, actually.
Right. Even the people that were hating it love it now because they're not sweating, driving their shit around. They're not worried about the cops showing up. It's a different world right now. And, they can all kiss my ass. I mean, it was the right side of things to fall on. We need to be free. We shouldn't be criminals. And anybody who thinks decriminalization is the answer is an idiot, because it makes you a criminal in the first place. We shouldn't be decriminalized because we're not fucking criminals to start off with.
Yeah, I'm just surprised. I'm really surprised at how these posts that are coming out after this Prop 64 seem to be extremely positive. I mean, people that were going to be charged, having their charges dropped, cars not getting searched by cops. I mean, those are major, major, major big deals.
One of the reasons it is so major is because that gave them access to all the other charges. In other words, if they could get inside your vehicle and start snooping around, who knows what they might find.
Oh, I can tell you exactly what they're going to find in my vehicle, and it's not going to be good.
Like when I got pulled over, the first thing they said was, we can smell cannabis, and that led them to my searches, which you guys all saw live. But that does, they searched my car just because it smelled like weed.
Which John replied, I am cannabis.
Yeah, I happen to have some on me.
I'm actually
I love it that I handed him the container. But what's smell proof? He opened up, smelt it, and gave it back to me.
I'm a 44-year-old flowering cannabis plant.
Well, the great thing about 64 is it's moved the line in the sand completely. I have lawyers that I follow on Facebook, and every day I read someone else dismissed, someone else felony dismissed, felony dismissed. And I would love to just stack those, the 50 to 100 that I have seen go by of people, and just, really hit those people who are giving us so much shit for 64, and just remind them, hey, you really were happy with this person going to jail or going through this? Are you not? Where are you to not celebrate these people not going to jail, including somebody who was staunch against it, came out and immediately had a case and immediately was thrown out right after it happened. And they're like, oh shit, I got my stuff out. That's so bad.
Well, I had to take a loving rib on Dennis Peron's Facebook page after I saw that thousands of cannabis cases are getting dismissed, because it's like, how could anybody in this industry not support thousands of people getting their lives back and getting out of court and not having to pay lawyers?
Well, if you're financially dependent on the trade and you don't want the prices to fall, bingo.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's pretty shitty that many people people that claim to be activists that fought against Prop 64. I don't see them doing any activist work anymore. And it just seems to be like, that got real personal. It wasn't like people were being mature and arguing on a mature level. Shit got super personal, which I am inclined to believe Sam, because the level of personal that it reached was like, you're taking away my livelihood. Which is like, guess what? If your livelihood is based on people going to prison and prohibition, fuck your livelihood. And fuck you. So no offense, but come on, like, that's not a good profit margin. We
You're
can
so
do better.
Canadian. I love you. I'll be like, from the American's perspective, fuck you, full offense. If you think your neighbor should go to jail because you deserve to get high prices for pounds of pot, you're an asshole. Yeah. I'm just gonna throw that out there. Fuck that.
But I'm a Canadian, so I gotta say sorry.
Hold on, that's an insult to assholes, because assholes are useful.
You know what? I agree. People in that area, in that mindset, are straight up pieces of dog shit, and that's
that's what I'm talking about.
Dog poop.
Just saying.
Just saying.
With the dog on the arm.
With the dog on the arm.
Like
So
that.
he's an expert in dog poop.
That's awesome.
Well, you know what? We're still not seeing prices drop like here in Canada, where we had a lot of legal cannabis access for years. But when legalization happens in 2018, let's see those prices drop, so accessibility will be more there for everybody. Can't wait.
That's it. Access for everyone. I mean, you know what? It's funny because this industry is a lot of different things. I mean, we all came from different aspects. We led ourselves into this sort of, you know, cannabis led us down this sort of guiding light that is, oh, there's really a lot of good that you can do with this plant. Like, it's bigger than just getting high. It's bigger than me having access to it. It's bigger than me growing it and making profit. And you meet people like Forrest, and you meet, you know, these people that are doing really, really incredible things, and it makes you feel proud to be a part of this industry, you know. And I'm sorry, but fighting against something like Proposition 64, which is going to let all those people go free and lose. I mean, Todd, you yourself went free. Like, what the hell? You got off, did you not?
Yes. They finally, after 4 years of prosecuting me, dropped the case against me because I wouldn't cooperate. That's right.
Now I know you talk. You're a solid guy. You talk a real game. You say, hey, jail's not the worst thing in the world. Blah 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 blah. But I will tell people out there who have never been to jail and who are only potentially facing jail, there is serious energy that goes into that. It's like getting audited. It's like a family member passing away sometimes. If you don't have that. If you have that fear of like, oh no, what, they're taking my freedom away, and that's a heavy thing to lay on someone for years of their life, 4 years of his life without even getting
5. But let me say this: the fear is worse than the reality. People live through prison, get out of prison, make meaningful lives of themselves all the time. And like for me, I self-surrendered to it way a long time back because I figured I'm fucking with fire and there's no way I'm not going to get burned at some point. I'm debating guys like the DEA head at the friggin' University of Miami. I'm pretty much sure there's a target on my back.
And Joseph Petrie.
Yeah, fuck him. But at the same time, the reality is that, you know, it wasn't that hard to go through. And I tell anybody that's facing any case, don't fear it. Don't run from it. Just go up, show up on time, be polite, go through it, get out. And trust me, it'll be behind you quicker than you can imagine. I mean that. Yeah. I so mean that. If we all threw ourselves at the courts would break. If we all pled not guilty and pushed them to trial, they would not be able to afford to prosecute us. We could break the system. It's just that fear inhibits our ability to do so most of the time.
And it's changed the dynamics. 10 years ago, for the Ed Rosenthal trial, I had to go before a grand jury and into federal court and declare my 5th and 10th Amendment. Now that wouldn't be necessary, you know, due to the law change. And one of the reasons we're also celebrating the life and the passing.
Technically, it would. That was federal. That was federal, my friend.
That was federal. You're right.
That could still go down. That could still go down. And the stance ATN took was, I will not cooperate in this prosecution. And he was facing fucking prison because he wouldn't basically testify on stand. He said, no, I plead the 5th. At that point, they say, okay, you realize you can be held in contempt of court. And the choice is either, okay, speak or go to jail. And, you know, at that point, I love you, 18, you chose jail. And a lot of people should choose jail.
You have to stand in the fear. You have to be there. You can't run away from it. Once you're subpoenaed and you're in with the dragon's claws.
Oh yeah. Well,
you're in it. You have to ride it out, and you have to hold your head high, do it right. You have good lawyers. Don't capitulate, as Todd said. Don't cooperate in any way, shape, or form. There's no need for it. It's them to prove it against you. No need for you to give them any more information that they need to prosecute you. But dynamics are shifting, and hopefully they'll shift federally. But as I was saying, and one reason we're talking and celebrating Mickey Martin's life is because he was one of us who got busted. And then when he was busted, and after he was busted, then he started a toy drive every winter, every Christmas. He started a toy drive to raise money for toys for kids whose parents are in jail right now for life sentences or less. And I donated to it every year. And then he started to do in the fall, he did the same thing for back to school, so we could buy them new shoes, school equipment, anything you need to get back to school, because as you know, when somebody is in jail, they lose everything. And those kids are in foster or with grandparents or with a step parent, and their lives are completely upended, and I will forever give mad respect. And I think they're going to rename the toy drive for Mickey Martin, and they should, because it was his instigation to never forget those right now. Even though we're celebrating our victory, never forget right now somebody is in jail right now suffering. And he never forgot that, made sure that those kids and their families were taken care of along the way.
Not just someone that is in jail either, Etienne, but you called it with the children. You know, it's one thing to say, I'm going to go do jail when you have no children. But, you know, Lois Lane, who's in the chat room right now, said her father got 10 years in the 1980s for growing cannabis. He was in jail. He was not there to watch her grow up. He was not there to protect her. And when he came out of jail, she was a stranger to him. And that's an extremely serious, heavy thing that if you don't have kids, you can't possibly imagine the level of sacrifice that you're making when you go off to prison for 5 or 10 or 15 years. And those kids just, you know, they don't get raised the same way.
No. And, you know, one thing I want to say is I felt like after 5 years of like living in and out of a visiting room in a U.S. prison, I watch families. I see what it does to them. And one of the reasons I was such an advocate of 64 is because something has to stop Child Protective Services from disrupting families and ripping us apart from our kids or from our parents and putting us through hell. I mean, because that's really what's happening, because our parents don't drink wine. They smoke a little pot. That means that their families get ripped apart. I just think it's a horrible situation. And those poor kids are doing time with their parents, and that's what's fucked up. You know, you're locking up some dad for growing flowers, and that poor kid is crying every night. That kid is missing his dad. That kid doesn't have mentoring. For why? Because the guy grew flowers in his backyard. It's just got to stop.
You called it, dude. Those kids are doing time as well. And there's a lot of kids doing time through their parents, you know, through their loved ones.
And opportunities are lost. They'll never have. They never know. You know, that confidence lost that affects all throughout their lives. So it destroys, you know, it's sad. I've seen way too many of it. And I'm glad to see that at least there's a ripple that's started, and hopefully it'll spread to other states and across into other countries. By the way, congratulations for medical marijuana in Mexico. Did you see that this week?
I did see that. Yeah. Fuck. Pretty, I can't help but felt that was a little like Trump jab.
I don't doubt it was, to be really honest. I think that a lot of countries, you know what, in some ways I think his presidency could prove to be very positive, because it will cause a lot of other powers that be to be proactive about what it is they don't like and can't stand. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you know, people are like, oh, they knew the consequences. So it's like, listen, this isn't murder. This isn't robbing a bank. This is growing a fucking flower. The fact of the matter is the consequences shouldn't exist, and civil disobedience, until it doesn't exist, absolutely must.
The kids didn't grow the plant.
Mark. I like that. I couldn't unmute my mic fast enough to say absolutely it must.
And you can't blame the kids. The kids didn't grow the plant. The kids are the victim of the circumstance of the decisions of the adults. They had no say or no plan in any way, shape, or form. They just have to ride it out, and they're the victims. They lost their parents, their parental unit, and their stability, what they knew as their lives.
What about someone like Forrest, who's grown pot for his kids? What about someone like my mom, who's given me pot when I was 9? I mean, a lot of times the reason these people are pushed to this is because they're trying to save their health of their children. So
right, they've got no other risk. They've got nothing else to lose. They've lost everything else. This is the last stance. I mean, look at Forrest. Look at everyone else, and many of us who have found cannabis. It was almost like you. It was the last stance. Your mom finally was like, I mean, how many cancers had you gone through? 7 to 8 cancers by the time she already decided to finally give you pot? 9. Okay, that's kind of. I might want to back that up a little bit. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I know you were really you were 2.
I wish you'd given it to me earlier, honestly.
Now, how early? I mean, do you think she should have given it to you at 2?
She, well, now that I know about edibles, but you wouldn't look. They were giving me fucking chemotherapy and putting me on radiation at age 2. So I don't know. I mean, if you're able to give me chemotherapy at 4, 5, 6. Why the hell can't I have pot? I mean, I wish she'd given it to me years earlier. She didn't give it to me until I was 9, and I had it in soft tissue between my left lung and my heart. I only wish, but I'm glad she gave it to me at all. I mean, to be honest, where would I be without it?
I would know you, and I'm glad I know you. I'm sorry you went through it, but like you said, you hate that I went through war myself, but I'm glad I went through it so that I was a patient, so I met and knew all of you. I don't, sit there and wish any illness on anyone.
I want to say this out loud. I actually am glad I went through it. And ironically, I caught a little slack for saying that I wish Jeff Sessions, our Attorney General, would get cancer so he'd have a change of heart. And, and I'll say flat up, if it doesn't kill you, it brings out compassion in people. It brings out empathy in people because they experience the end of life, and it changes your whole view on everything. So I'm really, really appreciative of the fact that I went through cancer as a child. I'm really appreciative of the fact that I had to face death, and I learned about life, and I learned about passion and honesty and everything good in my life through that. So I'm glad I had cancer. And honestly, I don't even feel bad when I meet some people that have cancer, because I feel like something in life is going to kill you anyway. And I made the comment to people, it's better to die with your eyes open than to get hit by a train and live your entire life with your eyes closed, not even knowing they were closed.
Yeah, so, that's heavy. That's heavy, dude. Only someone that has lived through what you lived through could really say that, have that perspective. It's a great perspective. Life is... a lot of people walking through life asleep, zombied right out. And it's even if it's right at the end of life, if you can get awoken, if you can see a different perspective, there's real value in that.
Eat that red pill. We've all on the panel here have eaten the pill.
You got to think Sessions knows some family members that have cancer. Like I can't imagine his entire family just it's impossible. Whose family doesn't have cancer?
Well, you know what, though? I mean, he comes from a part of the Deep South where things are a little bit old-fashioned, and realistically, hard prejudices are hard to lose. And we're dealing with some real ingrained bigotry with these people going way, 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 way back. And the reality is that, and unless it's his loved one or his daughter or somebody, and somehow his mind is opened up. Hey, listen, even if you watch the DVD extras on the Culture High and you listen to Danny's story, which is Dr. Lester Grinspoon talking about how resistant he was initially to giving his son Danny cannabis when he had cancer. And it was his wife that went behind his back, went to the schoolyard, hit up one of his friends, got him some pot and gave it to him without Lester knowing, because Lester was worried about what Harvard would think if they found out he was breaking the law and doing this.
But that so makes sense, Todd. And you know what? It's a perfect example, too, because we know that Lester is a loving, empathetic man. He is a good person. But the power of worry, of a prestige, of a position, of a doctorate degree, all of these things. And I've met incredible doctors out there who are terrified, not even forget about giving their son or their daughter cannabis. They're terrified to tell people that cannabis can shrink a tumor. They won't even say it. It's like a bad word. They're like, oh no, we can't say that. Well, why not? Why can't you say that? It's a fact. It can. Doesn't mean it always will. But the fact that it can means you should be able to say it. They're scared, man. They got a lot to lose, which is crazy because the person dying has a lot more to lose.
Hey, let me say a shout out to Dr. Grinspoon. He turned 89 years old yesterday.
I saw that. Happy birthday, Lester.
But doctors became the front line, as stated before. When Prop 215 passed, they went after the doctors, and the doctors had to physically band together and actually push back against the prosecution of the federal prosecutor at the time, or the head of the drug czar even was coming out and publicly shaming them, and they were taking that type of ribbing. I mean, that's huge when you have literally the top lawmakers in the country shitting on you in the national media that goes out back when the press secretary and everybody all went in one location and got debriefed. I mean, they actually really tried to destroy their careers. And they
actually used Todd McArea's slides and put his quotes on CNN, and it was our drug czar, what was his name at the time, Barry McCaffrey. He's in the book. And he came out and publicly went out. He actually came out and named Dr. Todd McArea because, I mean, at the time in the 90s, there was a handful of these people that you could point to all over the country that were actually vocal advocates writing books and calling for change. I mean, literally, I could rattle their names off the top of my head, and unfortunately, a lot of them have passed away. You know, like Dr. John Morgan, who wrote Marijuana Myths and Marijuana Facts, who was awesome. What a great guy. Dr. Todd Micarea, who the CMA, California Medical Association, went after around 2015 because he was one of the most vocal advocates that we had. He was one of our first whistleblowers. Anybody listening to this should look up his name, T-O-D with one D, and it's M-I-K-U-R-I-Y-A is how you spell Micarea. And he is one of the pioneers in this. If it wasn't for him and Dr. Lester Grinspoon, I don't know what it would have looked like in the 70s and 80s trying to get information about medical cannabis.
And fortunately, they led to then my doctor, Dr. Frank Lucido, who in Berkeley became a predominant one and actually joined in suit with Todd Micarea against the feds to actually win the right for doctors to be able to continue to have that confidentiality between patient and doctor to discuss your medical cannabis. So, and that still goes on today as each one of these new states go on, now enlists the challenges and the fears of now doctors to write the prescriptions, because those earlier ones that write a lot of prescriptions, like Dr. Todd Micarea had CMA, you know, those state medical boards come after you and are vindictive. So it requires strength of the educated then in those states to actually ride that pine, to actually skate on that razor's edge to win that right for everyone still. And that's happening with each state secession, you know.
Vindictive, another word for endocannabinoid deficient. Honestly,
so true. So true.
Yeah, like I couldn't even, I smoke so much cannabis and I've had people do me so wrong, and I just like, I wish the best for them. I don't want them to have suffering. I don't want them to, you know, I just, vindictive is such a strange energy. It's not the energy that if you use cannabis on a daily basis that you want to feed. That's for sure. But
those medical boards are nothing but those strict run the line line followers.
Well, can I just say this? It was because Dr. Todd and guys like what they were such a threat, and that's really the reality of it. Is they knew the information they were presenting was true. It was not something they could debate. So the easier thing to do was to attack the person presenting the information, and they did. You know, I was going to say Dr. William Eidelman, who was one of Jack Herrera's earliest, other than Dr. Micarea, recruits into the activism game, is still an activist today. And he put his medical license on the line to advocate medical cannabis after meeting Jack. He was really a hero. He still is. He's a great guy out of Los Angeles, and I've always had so much respect for him. But the California Medical Association tried to revoke his medical license over his stance on medical cannabis, and he fought them tooth and nail.
That's what they love to do. I'm just talking with Dr. David Allen right now, who's also been through some similar things with his license, etc. I've invited him on. He doesn't have the right computer. He says he has an Apple phone. I said, if you can figure it out and put your phone down so you're not moving around, we would love to have you on for discussion. Alec is also going to be at his lab in about 5 minutes, and from SC Labs, and he'll be coming in the next 10 minutes. So I have a feeling our conversation is going to get a little scientific here in the near future.
Well, it's good. It'd be great to hear from a doctor's perspective, you know, because to hear from, you know, their educated standpoint regarding all the different fears that they have to actually face, you know, from going through school, from doing their actual, you know, I know students that actually have gone on to become doctors, that they took a very great risk by choosing to, you know, research cannabis as their thesis all the way through their doctorates, and were very successful in doing so. And, you know, they had to actually physically take a risk because that was their financing, whether their professors would accept or reject it, or anywhere along the line to where they got their, you know, doctor certification, much less when you step out into the real world. So there's risks all along the way if you really want to come out and be one of those that are spoken out regarding cannabis.
Well, you know, I want to say something because somebody wrote in the chat on the video the other day that, you know, I was crazy if I didn't think that people were still getting the doors kicked in and getting raided and stuff. And let me tell you something, I am all too aware of what's happening everywhere else in the world. And I really still, one of the reasons I hope that we do this show and that more information gets out is because I hope people see the normalization of cannabis that's happening here in California and in Colorado and in Washington and in other places like Oregon, and demand that happen where they live. I hope that our stories inspire people in places that aren't yet legal to take the step forward and go engage. And you know, I'm not saying go to prison. I'm not saying, you know, go compromise your families, but I'm saying don't be afraid anymore. You have so much information behind you. Use it. You know, use your smartphone, get educated. People like me don't have to go to places like Kinko's to hand you copies of a book that is expensive and hard to get anymore. You can go on your phone and read every single chapter of Jack Herer book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes, free on jackherer.com if you want to, and get inspired. It's that easy. I mean, and I implore people to do it. And when they meet their politicians, don't let them escape the fact that they're carrying a smartphone, because you're stupid if you're carrying a smartphone and you don't know how to look stuff up.
Yeah, for real.
So type in the word hemp, hit enter, go to the Wikipedia and start learning some history, because this is all of our history. This is connected to all of us. It doesn't matter what color, what race, what country you came from. Cannabis has a connection to you and you need to learn it.
Hey, Dr. David Allen just wrote me a message saying the California Medical Board targeted him because the Drug Task Force called the medical board in California. And I guess that was where he had his problems. I think it was in Maryland or something. It was definitely not in California. I thought it was like out east somewhere that he originally had his problems with the drug force. Just brutal.
Unfortunately, this is going to happen state to state. This is going to happen because there is institutionalized bureaucratic bigotry that we are dealing with all the way across the board. So every single state in this union that legalizes is going to be dealing with some jerk along the way that's going to resist. I think what's fortunate for us, though, is that we gain momentum. And as we get more numbers behind us and we get more wins behind us and there's more information around us, it's easier for us to overcome the people that are in our way with misinformation.
Jeff from Aqualab says the cops came into our grow 2 weeks ago. I just walked out, got in my car, and drove away. That's one way to do it, I guess.
I hope the cops did the same thing.
I hope.
Jeff. I hope you came back and had your plans, bro. Is what I hope.
Dude, yeah, seriously. I hope you're okay, dude. I hope all is well with everything down there for you. Jesus, cops. Yeah.
Let me say this though. Even if this is the beauty of California right now. There was a story that it doesn't matter if it's 2 or 2,000. It should have been 7 or 7,000, because any number over the 6 plant limit is only being charged as a misdemeanor. So they're screwed. So you could go grow 4,000 pot plants, 4,116 pot plants in your Bel Air home, and the state of California can only charge you with misdemeanor manufacture. I guess they're still going to call it. I wonder if they're going to call it cultivation yet. I wonder if they've learned that it's a plant quite yet.
It doesn't seem so, because the absurdity of what they're trying to do would just be so unveiled if they actually had the realization that it was like what you said many shows ago. These people are habitual florists, like habitual florists. Think of how absurd that is. I love growing flowers and plants.
You know, though, can I say straight up, and John will probably totally agree, and anyone who grows understands. And, you know, I was lucky to learn how to grow pot when I was 13 years old, because it taught me the cycle of life. It taught me how to plan ahead. It taught me how to use nutrients and think about what I was feeding a living thing in my life.
Yep.
Which taught me how to feed myself. It taught me the value of pH and water. It taught me actually how to not care too much for something and to let it grow. I mean, growing cannabis was the best life lesson I could have ever experienced. And I've said this to a lot of people, I was lucky to be growing pot at 13, 14, 15, 16, because Mother Nature looking over my shoulder always rewarded me for my efforts. Meaning, if I grew an extra 100 plants, I got an extra 100 plants worth of energy. But my friends, on the other hand, who were working minimum wage and kind of doing minimum amounts of work for that minimum wage, in return for getting the least amount of money they could get paid, they did the least amount of work they could do. I, on the other hand, was learning how to like work hard and apply myself and to like throw in all my effort, because I knew I would be rewarded. if this makes sense. Whereas my friends at work, they could bust ass for 3 months, go to their boss, ask for a raise, and get laughed at. And that's a fucked up lesson to be learning when you're 16, 17, 18. And instead, having gardening actually taught me a very different lesson. Taught me how to wake up early and to work hard and fucking stay at it. And I'm so thankful for that.
It's good to be thankful. Hey, what's going on, Alec? I see you've made it to your lab.
Hey, what's up, Marcus? How you doing? Good morning.
Good, man. Setting the phone down, getting it all sorted out.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I apologize. I've been somewhat unreliable in the past.
We forgive you, bro. But can I ask you, what happened, bro? We had Tim on last Sunday. He was so enthusiastic. And then we saw the website on Wednesday. So we figured we'd wait and ask you.
Totally. Well, last weekend, for what it's worth, I had just the day before got back from a 16-day whitewater rafting trip down the Grand Canyon. And when I got back, I didn't have my internet at my house.
No, you know, I meant the show was canceled. The country fair was canceled. Yeah. Could you talk about that a little bit? Because we wanted to talk about the contest and the way you divided up the terpene categories. But obviously now you have some information about the show not happening yet.
Totally. Yeah. And I was just, for what it's worth, making a shitty excuse for why I wasn't able to make it last weekend. And I apologize. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, we're really excited about Cannabis Country Fair. You know, we were about to do a real cool kind of interesting way of you know, basically having the judging process take place. You know, taking into account kind of chemotypic profiles a little bit more. You know, and use it and just trying to celebrate a lot more of the diversity of what cannabis has to offer, you know, through this new type of judging that we were going to try out. So for what it's worth, you know, they were going full bore, and they had a really interesting big production team backing them to help kind of make this event happen. And you know, it's interesting because, you know, just with as many events as there are now, and as much as you know, people that are holding events and doing promotions are vying for people's attention throughout the summer to try to come to these different events. You know, when they just kind of saw, I think, some early signs and early red flags on you know, it possibly not getting, you know, the type of turnout they were looking for. You know, just you know, kind of the full moon eclipse kind of symbiosis event happening soon after that, with, you know, and that is kind of, I think, one of the events of the summer. You know, that's like sold out, and kind of, you know, tens of thousands of people, I think, in Southern Oregon. But
no, you're right. The logistics of doing it around other events has to be considered earlier on, and if they weren't, it's definitely a reality. And you know, you're talking a pretty remote drive for most people.
Oh, you're cracking up on us, Alex. Something just blew with your mic.
That sounds like something actually blew, doesn't it?
Yeah,
we can't hear us.
No, we can't hear you anymore. We can't hear you. Mute that mic for a second.
Yeah, it went crackly bad. Crackly.
Yeah, his audio just went pooched.
Was that me? Is it?
Yeah, I think you're okay now. I think it was like a weird feedback or whatever. You know, another thing I was going to say is probably he had mentioned a serious production company that he had gotten into partnership with for this project. And I kind of got the idea that it was them that looked at it and said, listen, like, we're not going to be able to get all this happening in time.
Yeah, you know, I think their some of their insights, kind of you know, on some of the early red flags were kind of the, you know, I think, yeah, the really big indicators that kind of Tim took to heart to kind of make that decision. You know, but yeah, I mean, it's for what it's worth, though, it's funny because, you know, the Emerald Cup has become such a, you know, logistical, just like it's the, you know, one of the biggest kind of you know, influxes of samples that we ever see at our lab. And so kind of each year, now that we've been doing it for the last 7 years, you know, we've tried to put together a team to a lot more early on in the year, you know, kind of help to really work out the logistics and how, you know, the deadlines and the sample intake and stuff like that are going to go, you know, to avoid this huge kind of collision nightmare that very often happens, you know, especially when the Emerald Cup kind of sampled, total amount of entries kind of has gone up from, 5 years ago around 100, 150 to, each year almost doubling, and last year with all the categories combined, it was like, I want to say there's like 1,300 entries. And 800 of them came in the last like 2 days or 3 days, which is after Tim had pushed and extended the deadline, trying to include more people because there was a lot of people up in arms. And so,
well, fortunately, the Emerald Cup's happening this year. But can you wrap a little bit, because you were involved in the thought process that broke the contest into a new kind of contest and turned it into these 5 different terpene categories.
Yeah.
And I really would love for you to talk about why you selected those 5 terpenes, and also what those 5 terpenes are, and also as a lab, are you just using spikes? I mean, could you explain the little process a little bit? Talk about that, because I find it so fascinating.
Awesome. No, absolutely. So essentially, for the last 9 or 10 months here at SC Labs, we've been working with a data scientist, a gentleman by the name of Stelios, who's a Greek dude from out. He used to do a little bit of work with Vedrokan and Arno, kind of, attempting to, look at their chemometric data and kind of identify trends and, interesting kind of, aspects of their data. And so, we started working with him because we had a lot of terpene data that we wanted to aggregate and like look into. And I think I might have potentially mentioned this before on here, but we basically set out to create a terpene classification system. And, when we came into it, we, didn't really know what we were going to find or see. But, after 9 months and a lot of back and forth, kind of working with this data scientist to kind of fine tune these different statistic data tools, he was using things like PLSDA, which is like partial least mean square analysis, I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, and then like certain types of clustering algorithms like or clustering tools like k-means clustering, artificial neural networking. We started to use a combination of these different tools to kind of develop a novel.
Oh wow, that was quick. You just got bumpity boomed. I almost thought for a second I accidentally, here's a funny thing sometimes, if I'm typing and having off-screen conversations and my cursor's on the chat room here in the Google chat, it could dump people. Hey, welcome back, Alex. Alec, I almost thought I bumped you out there, but I see you just left by accident.
Yeah, no, it just dumped me. I mean, it just got an error on my phone. I could. Anyway, if there was a way you could send me the Google Hangout link to my email, Alex,
of course.
Labs, I'm gonna try to shift from my phone to my computer. I think that would be a little bit better.
Oh yeah, dude. You tell me the email. What is it? Alec@SC Labs.
SC Labs, exactly. SCLABS.com and ALEC.
ALEC. Yeah. Okay. So hash.
Cool.
As quick as you.
But yeah, I don't know where I fell off there, but essentially we've been working for the last 9 or 10 months now to basically sort through and cluster our terpene data to in an effort to create a terpene class system. And what we've found is really interesting in that, with about 95+% accuracy and predictability, we can essentially send any terpene report that we test of any strain that comes across our labs, and it fits very interestingly into one of essentially about 4 major primary buckets, or clusters. And then within each of the primary groups or clusters, there's an additional, between like 2 to 3 subgroups that any strain that we pass into it essentially very predictably falls into. And it's what's interesting about the system is it's very intuitive if you know the smell of cannabis, so kind of on one spectrum of this class system, you have terpinolene as this primary terpene that from the clustering is either there in pretty significant amounts or it's not at all there. And terpinolene is the dominant primary terpene in such a range of the quote sativa stimulating strains that we know, like Jacaré, Trainwreck, Durban, Sage, Dutch Treat, a lot of the Hawaiian stuff that, that is around or still barely around, but a lot of those, XJ, J1, that those strains all smell slightly different from one another, but yet they're more closely related in similarity than trying to compare that to, say, sour diesel, and sour diesel, kind of intuitively from the smell that it shares probably more in common with, say, Chemdog and Gorilla Glue and, OGs and such. Although there are still slight variations and differences. And I think the OG group is one of the hardest groups to get your full grasp on, because instead of one primary terpene, typically making up the brunt of the terpene profile, OG is like almost the most, or this fuel group is almost it's almost the best version, I would think, of like what a hybrid kind of terpene spectrum would look like, because it's not one primary terpene, it's like 3 to 5 terpenes, and it's always predictably limonene, myrcene, beta-caryophyllene, typically at almost like co-dominant amounts. And depending on the pheno, it can slightly shift to become more limonene dominant or myrcene dominant or beta-caryophyllene dominant. But those differences are enough to make up, the differences between, say, Girl Scout cookies and because Girl Scout cookies is a beta-caryophyllene dominant strain cultivar, and the beta-caryophyllene, so it shares similar to say like Chemdog and sour diesel. It is all those strains are typically more beta-caryophyllene dominant. But in the Gorilla Glues and sour Ds, the beta-caryophyllene will just be slightly higher, say, than the co-dominant myrcene or limonene, as opposed to Girl Scout cookies or strains similar. It'll be appreciably higher in beta-caryophyllene compared to the limonene, myrcene, et cetera, et cetera. And so in this gas or fuel kind of group, you seem to have this kind of shifting range of, the primary terpene, either from like limonene to myrcene to beta-caryophyllene. The secondary terpenes in that group are typically linalool and humulene. But anyway, so that's kind of one group. And then, on the far other side of the spectrum is, the classical myrcene group, which, is what is the biggest group that, of all the strains of cannabis we test, myrcene and the fuel groups are the most populated groups that we see and find. And so in the myrcene group, everything, all the fruity type strains, kind of Tangy, Agent O, Orange, kind of Calio, those classic type that smell. But in that same group, you also have all the purples, Purple, Urkel, GDP, Grape Ape, all those types of strains. But the differences between those two groups, like from what we see, the Tangis and a lot of those strains are in the same primary group as the purples and such, but the difference between the two is like a subgrouping, where the beta-caryophyllene is maybe a third of the total strain, as opposed to the myrcene, which is the primary terpene. But then when you look at the Tangis and even things like Blue Dream and stuff like that, it's typically really, really high myrcene, very low everything else, but then it's like alpha pinene or some other terpene that's in some small secondary amount. But the relationship between the primary and secondary terpenes, which typically and we test for 30 something terpenes, but we see about 5 to 9 terpenes ever really show up in any significant amount. But the really cool thing about the system too is we have like an outlier flag, so if something passes through that is, significantly off the norm, it's flagged as kind of not able to fit into any of these primary or secondary or, primary groupings or, these, subgroupings. And so through that, we've been able to identify very fascinating novelty that's created and entered through, say, the Emerald Cup, like last year, a group called True Humble, kind of big farm kind of co-op type group up in Humboldt, Mendo. They had a strain that sent in, which was actually, for what it's worth, it was an In the Pines cross. And so In the Pines is this pineapple type smell strain that has historically had high placements and has won the Emerald Cup in a certain year, and a certain pheno, it was crossed with Royal Kush, called it Royal Pines, and this Royal Pines strain was dominant in Ausamine. Ausamine is a really fascinating, interesting terpene that we don't really ever see in any significant amounts, except as a secondary terpene that makes, because so in this myrcene group, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of just rambling, but in this myrcene group, you have this one group where it's really high myrcene, Brelo, everything else kind of like tangy, a lot of typical kind of like, fruit smelling strains, blueberry, a lot of stuff like that. Then you have this other subgroup where it's like higher in beta-caryophyllene as a secondary terpene, and that all of a sudden makes up all the purples, and then you have, this other subgroup in the myrcene primary group that is the secondary terpene is ausamine, and ausamine is OCIMENE, and also whenever ausamine is strain, that all of a sudden makes it, it fall into this group that is like green crack, dream queen, papaya, mango, those, that smell. It's like it's a distinct kind of, but those strains smell similar. Same thing as like super skunk. If you've seen super skunk, it's kind of in the same world. And so ausamine, whenever it shows, is typically secondary, but less, typically 50% or less the primary terpene. And so all of a sudden now, through this outlier kind of flag, we identified In the Pines cross that was now dominant and primary in ausamine. And so we thought that was really interesting. We've also seen kind of a Borneol dominant, like Siberian ruderalis strain that one of my buddies calls bacon, that he's been breeding for a little while. And I'm sorry.
No problem. Excuse me to interrupt. I have a question about the classification. You're making terpene groupings, and are these terpenes based on their ability to potentiate or to modify the effects of the other cannabinoids, or are they just because they're there on the GC?
So pretty much, I mean, there's no kind of combined or introduced like entourage, effect, to it, because essentially all we're doing is taking the raw, terpene data off of the, that are ran from all the chromatograms that we test through MIDs.
Yeah, no, I understand exactly, but I guess what I'm saying is that most of the terpenes you're talking about are potentiating and modifying THC, for example.
Right.
Myrcene certainly does, limonene certainly does, pinene does, and linalool to a certain degree certainly does, but caryophyllene does not. It doesn't particularly potentiate or modify recreational effects of THC, although maybe for medical uses there might be all kinds of applications.
Because it's beta-caryophyllene is the one terpene known to bind to CB2 as well, right?
Yes, that's true.
And so I think it's really, and so it's really interesting because our purpose
it doesn't. If you vaporize it with THC and pure caryophyllene, it doesn't potentiate or modify the THC effects. That's all.
Which and I think that's really fascinating. And I think these kind of things to tease out are some of the most interesting things that can be found to help anecdotally add to people's experience and take away some of the suggestive selling, because whenever a patient goes into a dispensary or a consumer goes into a rec shop and they're looking for a strain and they know very little to nothing about, say, cannabis or the nuances of these different terpenes, and they're looking for some effect, so much depending on their metabolism, their user experience with cannabis, what, their food intake that day. There's so many different kind of nuances about how a strain is going to help affect one person versus another. And then further, there's the whole idea of like biphasic activity, which just throws a whole nother like, crazy aspect to it. But what we're hoping with this system is, because when you go into a collective or a dispensary and there's 50 to 100 mason jars on shelves, it's almost incredibly unapproachable for a lot of people.
Is your system at your website or online?
No, it's we're just kind of now working on kind of the graphic front end of the whole program.
You've of course seen Mr. Lewis's NAPRO system, yes?
Yes.
Which at this point is the one that I like the best until somebody makes a better one.
Absolutely. And they've definitely done a lot of work to kind of add different aspects of, an algorithm to take and combine, data about the entourage effect to help kind of suggest what the strain is going to make you feel or what have you. And so I definitely think that's at this point pretty much.
When we did test with double-blind patients, we found that people all agreed on the type of effects they were getting from, say, THC with the one particular terpene, but they all had their differences and preferences to which ones they liked.
Right.
But they all agreed that it had a similar effect with each other. Let's say they smoked 25 milligrams of, or vaped 25 milligrams of THC with a tiny spike of limonene. They all said it was stimulating, uplifting, whereas myrcene, in large amounts, they would say would be more couch locky, for example.
Right. And I think that's such fascinating kind of insights that we can gain also from just the anecdotal user response that, people have naturally kind of, found in certain strains. And so adding, I think, this level of, specific terpene kind of data to help empower people's user experience or, kind of bud tenders' understanding of the smell of cannabis to help make recommendations, I think is one of the coolest things that we could help do with kind of the data that we've.
If you've got the cannabinoid level and the terpene profile levels, then in the future, people will be able to make a very educated guess on the type of effects even before they try it.
And I think, because especially too with terpinolene, like what I would actually ask you your thoughts on terpinolene, because terpinolene, from all the literature is, when vaporized is suggested to be a sedative, but on, contrary to that, what's really interesting is most user experience I've ever seen.
I've never vaped terpinolene. I've never vaped it by itself or with pure THC, like I did with the other maybe top dozen terpenes I did try.
Nice. Because terpinolene, is this primary terpene, again, in all these like really typical quote kind of sativa strains that people, think that effect with Trainwreck and Durban and Sage, Zeta, all those strains. And, and so I wonder if kind of, the literature out there that suggests that terpinolene when vaped is a sedative, I wonder if that somehow has something to do with the biphasic effect of it.
Myrcene is reported to be that way too. If you take a small amount of myrcene, it's stimulating. If you take a lot of myrcene, it's couch locked.
Flip. There we go.
So it's a bit biphasic, the way cannabis in itself is in general, where at first it stimulates and then it depresses to a degree.
Right. And so and I think it's really fascinating. And then, also just kind of what you're talking about with beta-caryophyllene, I wonder how, so sure, beta-caryophyllene and what you're saying, might not. I tried
beta-caryophyllene and THC, and it didn't help it in any way. I also tried caryophyllene oxide. That was nasty.
Nothing, yeah. But I wonder, you know, if you had Crohn's or irritable bowel syndrome or colitis or some type
No,
of
no,
autoimmune
I
condition.
don't. I'm a really healthy guy who just smokes because I like to get high.
No, and I appreciate
Right, but
that.
the point you're making is that a lot of terpenes do have medicinal or
Oh, absolutely, that's true.
yeah, and that's so I was going to ask this question is what are some in both to Sam and Alex, what are some of the most beneficial terpenes that are found in cannabis, and what do they do?
With cannabis, it's the most common ones. You know, myrcene, limonene, pinene, linalool, and you were mentioning some of the other ones like guaiol and neridol.
Much. We don't really see those in very significant
Yeah,
amounts. Yeah,
or in very large amounts. I agree.
Come on, what about ossamine?
But how-
I've never vaped ossamine, so I can't talk about it other than I know it exists.
Well, here's a question: Is the you know, okay, there's going to be dominant terpenes certainly, but are we going to learn the importance of these secondary terpenes and the effects they have on the dominant terpenes, and just a tiny little bit being present? Go ahead, Alec.
No, I think that's an incredibly good point. Throughout the process, you know, we've been trying to kind of understand this further, and kind of you know, one of my partners, Jeff, has kind of made this interesting kind of comparison to spices, you know, because it's like if you take, you know, a dash of salt and throw it into a soup, you know, it barely affect the taste. But if you take the same, you know, kind of dash and throw of like, you know, cumin or something, you just made cumin soup. And so it's like the presence of certain terpenes might, you know, substantially be, you know, these minor terpenes that are there in very, you know, almost what seems inconsequential, you know, might be actually having, you know, pretty substantial effects, you know, but whenever you look at, you know, kind of hundreds of these terpene reports and you see kind of, you know, these dominant terpenes pop up, you know, it's, you know, it's clear that, you know, there's these, yeah, like just like Sam was just mentioning, you know, these, you know, what we see is about 5 to 9 terpenes. Like the major ones exactly are myrcene, beta-caryophyllene, limonene. So, you know, myrcene, mango hops, you know, the sedative effect, you know, beta-caryophyllene, pepper, clove, you know, the CB2 receptor agonist, you know, so, and then, which gets into the whole idea of you know, these other plants that produce.
Also, too, what we found was that wide leaf drug varieties in general have a different sweet than narrow leaf drug varieties, which have a different sweet than hemp varieties, which have a different sweet. They're all the same terpenes, 150 or so have been identified in cannabis, but they tend towards certain terpenes in certain wide leaf, narrow leaf, and hemp varieties.
And yeah, that's what's interesting, because you see certain things cluster together where, you know, and then I was bringing up earlier the example of terpinolene. You know, you don't usually see in any of the other groups, like the primary groups, there's the pinene group, there's the myrcene group, there's the kind of combination limonene, myrcene, beta-caryophyllene group, and then there's the terpinolene group. And in the terpinolene group, it's either kind of there or it's not there. You know, and certain times you'll see it in some myrcene dominant strains in a tiny amount, but it's, you know, certain terpenes seem to cluster together too whenever, you know, and have might have the potential to grow out a certain wide leaf drug type or narrow leaf drug type.
I think there'll be more than one classification system. There'll be one based on frequency or amounts. But I think there'll also be one for ability to potentiate or modify in a particular direction.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's some of the most interesting ways to use the terpene classification system is to have an effect on breeding potentials, you know, and to be able to combine, you know, fascinating terpenes that don't really ever show up, and you know, with other terpenes, you know, that you know, like, and I think that, you know, ossamine is a great example of that, because the ossamine, what we see, it either shows up as a secondary, tertiary terpene in this myrcene primary group, which is on this one side of the spectrum. And again, that's like the green queen, green crag, like kind of a papaya, mango, all those types of smell.
Hey, Alec, I got a quick,
and then on the other
question. If I can add before I got to jump off. I got to check out of a hotel here in a few minutes, but I just wanted to add two things. First of all, I think it's great what you're doing, but always comparing flower profiles to extract profiles, I think, is a very useful thing to understand the impact that the extraction process has on manipulating, because a lot of these terpenes that you mentioned are not thermally stable, and if you stare at them cross-eyed, they do different things. So what would be really interesting to actually correlate would be not only from the flower to the extract, but also what happens at nail temperature. So if you were to actually do a headspace GC measurement of an extract that's, say, myrcene dominant, I will bet you $1 to a donut that at nail temperature, that myrcene does all kinds of different chemistry to actually make other terpenes or terpenoids from just oxidation on the nails.
And if we're going to do this, Mark, then we should also get a sample of fresh bud and GCM for terpenes, dry bud, and then extract, all from the same plant.
Sam, I'm in the process of doing that. I'm going to try to put together a data set that I could share.
Good, because that's something that will really.
I'm curing that actually chemistry is happening, based on your anecdotal results.
Good.
Hey, folks, I got to jump. My people are telling me we got to check out of our room. I will see you guys next week.
Thanks for coming on, Mark. Much love.
Aruba.
Yes, Aruba.
Aruba, the
Nice.
happy island.
Just off the coast of Venezuela. I used to know tons of people that hid their money there.
Not me. All right, folks. Bye-bye.
It's funny because it's true.
And to Mark's point, what's really interesting, is like we have seen a fascinating kind of trend in extracts, and that's that typically most to all extracts are beta caryophyllene dominant, and in so many cases it seems like the monoterpenes that boil off at lower temperatures seem to go first in the extraction
Absolutely
process.
True.
Nice. And so those are the more precious, delicate ones that you want that also contribute to the substantial majority of most of the strains. And so in the pursuit or effort to maximize your preservation of the cured terpene potential that could be there, and how much total terpene potential could be there, it seems like obviously, and everybody always knew that the heat and the purging and kind of all the curing process can in such a huge way just completely
have you looked at the amount of terpene that a fresh bud, a live fresh bud has versus a dried one versus a manicured processed one versus extracts? Have you done that with the exact same plant material to try to understand? Because I always assume more than 75% of the terpenes are lost from a fresh plant when you dry it.
Yeah, no, exactly. That makes tons of sense. Just by smelling the terpenes in the air of like a final, flowering room that's about to be harvested, it means that they're boiling off and they're getting into your nose. And so
absolutely.
And so I think, everything you do from the moment, throughout the cultivation cycle and the levels of heat, that you allow your room to get up to, I think, from the get-go are going to have a huge effect on the overall loss in terpene. But then, it's like, we haven't.
Can I ask you what a terpene samples like in water hash, Alex?
So what we typically see is in extracts, across the board, like typically we see about 1 to 3% of the total terpene content in an extract. Whereas if it's and if from both water and other types of processes, whenever that material has been extracted, with care to and it's really good quality material, and then low temperatures are used to heat, purge, whatever. We see certain types of extracts up to 5 to 9% total terpene content. And then there's these super terpene rich processes that, we see, like holy water and these different like terpene fraction type processes, we see kind of get up to anywhere from, 12 to 20% total concentration. And then, they get to the point where they're just like very runny and
But not to sound weird, I've always thought those people are actually adding food grade terpenes to their product, and it would be very easy for them to do so, especially when they're getting to these, triple that of a flower number of their overall terpene in an extract. So especially when you consider what you're talking about, that almost any solvent across the board, don't matter if it's water, CO2, butane, propane, washes the terpenes down, period.
Right.
And
so
either they're not purging it or they're amplifying it, because if they're doing it from a base of cannabis and they're getting 4 times as much terpenes that were found in the cannabis, I suspect bullshit. And this is also then my next question: what terpenes have you found that are hazardous, that people shouldn't be breathing in?
Well, so just real quick to what you were saying, I have seen both done with CO2 and with butane, a type of product, that's just, kind of called oftentimes like holy water or like terp juice or nectar. It's a type of process, and is, not adulterated. And I think that's really fascinating, in the potential to kind of however they're doing it. And typically in that type of extract, the cannabinoids aren't necessarily that high. It's like 40 to 50% overall cannabinoids. And then, kind of up to, 15+%, terpenes, what have you.
Well, I think all plants aren't created equally. And, some plants are 1 to 2% terpene content, and there are ones that are 4 and 5, and there are maybe the odd few anomaly out there that are close to 10.
If they're 10, they were created by man.
Sure.
They were consciously bred for terpene content.
Sure. But imagine
5%,
taking a
5%,
imagine taking a 10% or a 9 or an 8 and creating an extract with it. You're probably going to get a higher return in the terpenes than, say, your buddy who's using the 1 to 3.
Right.
And
that's true.
And processing is losing a lot, because if you've got a couple percent terpenes and you make and it's 20% THC by dry weight, the plant material, then that means you should have 8% when you've got pretty much pure product made, an extract made from it. But it's not. It never is. It's always low. Well, you say you've seen a few people who have done it, who are especially trying to capture terpenes, and they're using really low temperatures and specialized methods.
Yeah. I want to throw this out there. I have been fortunate enough to be the photographer for Chalice for 2 years in a row, and for the Secret Cup for a few years. And I have seen a shit ton of really beautiful, super incredibly well done extracts that were not adulterated and that were super terpy. And no disrespect to any of those guys when I say this, but they'll say it too, that they know a lot of people aren't really doing it like they're doing it. And there are a lot of people trying to adulterate really low par stuff. So buyer beware is, I guess, part of my message. There is both sides of the fence here.
100%. But what I think that we see that's really fascinating about your point, Todd, is like, I think there's so many people that test with us to basically, like, they think they have this business plan in their mind where they're like, all right, we figured out short path and we're gonna spin shit into gold, and and they see this huge margin kind of opportunity, and they're like, and then come to the realization. And there's so much intricacies to just the distillation process. So many people are just destroying so much of the THC, creating like Delta 8 and other kind of like breakdown isomer, like kind of almost junk cannabinoids, and then wondering where all the THC is. But that's process, what have you. But then, it's just such a heat intensive process to distill and create 95% Delta 9 THC, which, is often really difficult process, and so people then will, kind of have this kind of essentially it's kind of like a single molecule isolated distillate. And then, they think that they're going to go test, a bunch of most popular strains on the shelves, and then recreate these terp profiles based off the test results. And in 0 cases, I would say it's ever worked and ever had any success.
Which further enforces the theory, that potentially these very small amounts, these secondary and maybe even tertiary classes of terpenes are having a deeper effect than we understand.
I think that's totally the case. And also the fact that there's these alcohol esters and all these different potential kind of flavonoids. And I mean, and it just seems like it's such a, amazing complex matrix of terpenes, cannabinoids, all these things. And it's almost unpharmaceuticalizable in that way, or, where you can just like make a mixture and fucking add these terpenes synthetically back, whatever, and get the same effect. And, because for what I end up telling a lot of the clients that we work with that are doing that, I'm like, dude, all this kind of R&D you're doing is almost a waste of time. Because if you're going to try to add terpenes back, you either are going to create, for the connoisseur kind of like flavor market, where you're actually like taking distilled off, like almost like, Blue River and Tony and like, Mark, you guys are doing such awesome work in that whole world. And like the like natural like extracts of like perfect, preserved terpenes off of a plant, and then being able to add them as the dilutants, to make a cartridge with distillate, all of a sudden makes that cartridge taste amazing. Or if you combine those terpenes with any, kind of crude cannabinoid, that you're going to make into a vape pen, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
But for the people that are trying to take limonene, myrcene, beta-caryophyllene, and blend it in certain amounts to re-add, I mean, I think it's kind of dangerous road to go down, because for one, all these terpenes, aren't really known, like, there's these aspects to like toxicity and how much you're adding of any one of them, and how you might be substantially deviating from what cannabis would ever produce of these certain terpenes.
For sure. No, it's scary.
And then what I tell people is like, I'm like, if you're gonna try to recreate a profile, you're failing. You should just go full banana, or go full watermelon, like strawberry lemonade. It's like, if you're gonna do that, then go full for it, and because there is some type of the market that's gonna possibly be interested in that, because of the whole vape community and everybody just like shooting clouds of these crazy like PGVG like flavor blends, and I don't think that's good. I don't necessarily think, I think there's a lot not known about.
Let me ask you, what are those things from a scientific standpoint?
I'm sorry?
What the hell are those strawberry, watermelon, bubblegum flavors, may I ask? I don't use them, so I'm totally clueless as to what they are. But I'm asking you, what are they? What are they vaporizing?
Right. Well, I'm not exactly sure. I think maybe I don't know if Sam or somebody might be able to speak more to that. But there are a lot of like compounds, mixtures of compounds that probably pretty hard to kind of enunciate, and it's a lot of flavoring, preservative.
Can I ask you?
There's just a lot of crazy stuff in these products, and whether it's like a low temp that you're hitting it, or you're dabbing it, or whether it's up to like scalding hot nail. It's like, what are the range of compounds that are basically turning into other compounds when you're lighting them to these heats, these different levels of heat? Because certain things might be like that. I think that's one of the big ugly things of the vape industry, and people burning or vaping PG and VG all day long. It's like, when you're doing that, at these different temperatures and such, you're very well creating other types of very harmful toxic compounds like formaldehyde and other types of things. And so it's like, is that any better for you long term in your chronic exposure than nicotine or what have you? And
not nicotine, but definitely like radioactive nucleotides that they spray on that shit. I would have to say that shit is so bad. That's the comparison. That's why this glycol or whatever it is that people are clouding out on is so nasty. But people are like, oh, it's still way better than cigarettes. It's like, oh my God, like, yeah, but cigarettes are radioactive. That's not a good comparison.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and so I think you know, in the idea of do no harm, you know, and try to, you know, represent the cannabis plant to the highest of its potential integrity. You know, it's like, you know, people should just, yeah, both from a consumer and buyer standpoint, and then from people producing products, it's like, should, like, you know, step carefully in like the directions and really think them through and identify, you know, the potential, you know, hazards. Because yeah, it's, if you are going full strawberry banana flavor and adding that to distillate, or CBD crystal so you can sell it in the vape stores, you know, it's like, is that any better for you than, you know, kind of a lot of the other harmful products that unfortunately we're able to buy every day? And you know, so I think from my personal standpoint, you know, I prefer, you know, I prefer and I cherish and tribute artisans able to recapture and preserve the natural terpene expression of the plant, so that vape pen is like, wow, that's amazing. That's like my favorite sage I've ever smoked in flower form. You know, I mean,
probably the best way to do that is with dry sip. Then nothing is altered. You do have the original terpenes.
Yeah, I mean, aside from the most caustic volatile ones that would have evaporated out in the curing or drying of the herb and the time that it would take you to get those heads off, whatnot, but still very correct. I mean, you know, Tony and I, the main reason we're really doing that, Alec, with, you know, having designed a pen that's not disposable, because I was like, Tony was like, listen, we got to be a part of this California market, all these pens, there's so much swag, it would be great to offer something great. And then I was like, well, then we got to redesign like a pen, because
you guys are doing great.
Dude, well, but it's taken so long, and it's, you know what, integrity is just like, if you want high profits, you can't have high integrity. That's so far what I've learned in business. I learned it at my raw food cafe, which was super high integrity, super low profits. Like, we just couldn't bring our profits up high without lowering our integrity. And when you go into a project like the pen project that I'm doing with Tony, it's very high integrity. So it's great work, but it's, you know, in the meantime, all these distillate companies are just pumping hundreds of thousands of disposable pens that people are like, those aren't good. You know, that's not, like, California needs to be more responsible.
And most of the distillate has, yeah, and most of the distillate's laced with pesticides. Yeah, like, I mean,
so let's be honest, that's the worst.
There's multiple pesticides found in substantial amounts.
Well, gotta ask you this: have you ever tested a blunt wrap? Have you ever tested any of those whatever things that they wrap the fucking weed with? Because I would love to, bro. If you should, if you haven't, you should, Alex.
Yeah.
Back in my backwoods, that would be really horrifying, because I do enjoy smoking backwoods here and there.
You haven't tested them and you use them? Oh my god.
Well, no, I mean,
that's not very scientific, sir. That's not very scientific. You should have been the first one that was like, "What's in this?" Yeah. Well, could we request that one for the people, bro? You just could you test one? See, because I would love to see the pesticides. I would love to see if there's any molds or fungus. I would love to see what's in these things.
So we have been we're working with a gentleman, Roy Upton. He's the executive director of the American Herbal Pharmacopoeia, and he's the guy that kind of helped you know, create and lead the whole project to create the cannabis monograph. So we helped him find some funding to help kind of further develop out the cannabis monograph, and one of the big parts of it was to push and substantiate more of the kind of questions and concerns around the different aspects of microbiology, impurities on cannabis, and which ones are benign, which ones might be native, you know, and which ones kind of are actually pathogenic, hoping to only focus on pathogenic, or, I mean, hoping to be a document to help reinforce that cannabis is safe. And it's like, how much are we going to go to regulate all these aspects to get zero on this crop of these different microbes, where most of them are benign. There are these ones of concern, you know, that produce mycotoxins, what have you, blah, blah, blah. But it's an effort to kind of substantiate that further. And then we're doing the same thing with the pesticide side of it. And so one of the projects we're going to do is, you know, and so I'll add blunt wraps of all sorts and types to the list. But we basically have already bought a bunch of different types of tobacco, brand tobacco, like tailor-made rolled cigarettes, American Spirit pouch tobacco, a couple other things. You know, about 6 months ago, we did micro testing on a lot of it. It was actually about a year ago now, because this is before we had our new AB-SciX mass spectrometers. But now that we have these new mass specs, where the sensitivity is down to the single-digit part per billion, et cetera, we're about to kind of do a controlled experiment type, where we're able to identify and document, a wide range of different products that are, sold recreationally to the market, to see kind of similarly what has pesticides, what doesn't, what certain microbes are there, what aren't. On the micro topic, what we saw is like a lot of, we see very low to no yeast and mold, but in a lot of cases, like American Spirit pouch tobacco and a bunch of different types of packs, we would see about 500,000 plus colony forming units per gram in those products. So I don't know whether that might be some type of bio insecticide that somebody's using, like BT or yeah. And so in the not too distant future, and I'll totally share that with the entire group, we will have pesticide data on kind of a lot of these different recreational smoked products, because I think those are the most interesting and comparable to cannabis. After that big NBC article where pesticides kind of made this huge splash, and what have you in Southern California, we did have a couple dispensaries we work with send in like random samplings of like Safeway produce and vegetables, to test kind of tomatoes and grapes and celery and kind of all these different things for pesticides. One of the problems though is like, in order to do like an apples to apples type of comparison of these pesticides and the concentrations of these pesticides, you kind of need to dry it out similarly to cannabis would be dried out. Because if you're doing it wet, the concentration is going to be that much less, because that much more of the weight of the sample is going to be in water. And I think that this goes back to the the question, I think, or the experiment I think Sam was mentioning. We haven't done kind of like the same plants, kind of measure to see loss in kind of terpenes from drying or from these different aspects, but we can kind of make some assumptions based off what we see with just different extraction processes like fresh, frozen, live resin. But yeah.
Well, it's definitely interesting. Welcome, Indra. We were talking about some different terpenes. I remember you had sent me your thing recently saying that you finally tested those terpenes that you'd been collecting. Oh, we got you muted there. Gotta unmute your microphone. Where is he? Try that. Try that. Oh, one more time. There it is.
How about that?
Yeah, that's the one. We were both unmuting your mic simultaneously because I have the administration abilities.
Ah, okay. Well, did you read the list of how many terpenes were there?
I did, yeah. I didn't count them or anything. There was, I didn't really understand like the parts per million and stuff, like how small some of those amounts were, like which one was the primary. Were they in the most to the least list? Is that how they went? Oh, your phone's making a lot of weird sounds right now. Something's wrong.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's because the phone is the worst possible way to do this here.
Oh, yeah.
But, it doesn't go to the email, huh?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Let me try that. I guess I'm amazed at people that don't have the phones and the computers connected. I never think that way, but I can, yeah, go on the email. I'll send it to you there so you can get off the phone, because that's terrible.
Okay.
All right. All right. Yeah, he had sent me his, go ahead, Alex.
Oh, one thing I was going to add real quick before kind of we jumped into that is like, are you familiar, because it kind of gets into that question of like, well, okay, what terpenes are toxic? Is it dangerous to be adding like unknown concentrations of different terpenes? But I also think there's something really interesting to it. Is like with Ethan Russo's new paper, Beyond Cannabis, like exploring other cannabinomimetic plants, kind of one of the plants that he gets into is this, this plant that's, very near and dear to me. It's it's copal. Copal is it's this like, this sap from a tree that's, used indigenously, as a smudge, in ceremony spaces, And for what it's worth, copal has a diterpene in it that's a selective CB2. Sorry, it's a selective CB1 receptor agonist. So it binds to CB1, and it's a terpene that. And the only other thing that we know binding CB1, in cannabis, primarily is THC. So I think what's that going to do when you combine this terpene that binds to CB1 with THC that binds to CB1? I think that's an interesting kind of thing. There might be a new effect created.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's cool, man. That's definitely interesting. I think we're just at the cusp of learning what we will learn in the upcoming 10 and 20 years. I think it's going to be vast when we have this next generation of young people coming out and getting their degrees, getting their PhDs, and, going into it with the full focus of working in the cannabis field is going to be a whole different ball game. It's going to be interesting. I see a lot of young people excited about working in the cannabis sector, if you will, and it goes off in many, many different directions. You could go in 1,000 different directions with this plant in regards to focusing your life on it.
Well, and there's job descriptions and job listings in different states, where you got 28 medical states now and 6 to 8 coming online for a recreational. So it's a lot of opportunities out there. And I mean, we're still waiting here in California to figure out what all the regulations or all the different things to come on down and get solidified, so people can start working on their niches, because there's a lot of niches for people out there. Science key, very key. We're going to need more laboratories all over the United States, because there's going to have to be ring testing, all that, as well as people managing greenhouse management. Come on, that's going to be major realities, and working in handling gardens and doing everything proper. So before, where these were all OJT, were on the job training, basically, you can now actually get degrees and actually apply them to cannabis, where in the past it was a little more difficult. Not saying it's easy now, but it's there's a lot more opportunities now with regulation and everything that's taking place than there has been.
You also though can't say enough about on the job training aspect of it, because it's fascinating to me, kind of how much of this whole reality you can't learn in school, and how much of an advantage and head start that so many people that have been working within this industry and community for so long. There's such a depth and profound amount of knowledge about this plant, how to take care of it, how to not be reliant on pesticides whenever you treat it and grow it. And I mean, and although, yeah, I mean, I totally get the point that, for all the new up and coming kind of passionate members of the cannabis community, their added schooling is going to just take this to a whole nother level. But it's like such deep tribute and props to all our mentors that helped us individually get to this point.
Of course.
A lot of the shit you can't learn in school,
No, for sure not. Well, that's why those people will be working for our companies.
Or are these people that have started their own? I mean, I can't tell you about my own employees who started in BPG that have gone on to become doctors, lawyers, scientists, laboratories, also open their own dispensaries all over. It's a constant spreading of, and that as I said, goes back to OJT, but there will always be a certain amount of OJT, but there will be a less need for OJT in the future as more of this becomes standardized. It becomes, formulas for businesses, standard operational procedures that, like I said, back in the day, I didn't start off with a book of rules. We had no rules, but over time, after nearly 18 years now, I got a lot of rules, because there's a lot of people who fucked up along the way that showed us, and shout outs to our mentors and those that came before us that showed us how to do it. Because back in the day, I was the quiet one changing the reservoirs. Now we don't even have to change reservoirs. We've got dosatrons and things like that. So technology has changed even what I used to get paid $25 an hour to sit there and do. Now, people are getting to pay to trim. Now you're talking about the wine industry is worried about competing with the cannabis industry because of how still labor intensive cannabis is and is going to be, and they can't afford to pay the wages that cannabis companies can currently pay due to the unsubstantiated, false market that exists due to prohibition that will change as regulation comes online. But
it hasn't so far.
Time. No, not at all in any way, shape, or form. It's still very costly and expensive to be at the tip of the arrow, but we're leading the way so that, I've always felt 7 generations to come, so that 7 generations from now, they won't know our sorrow. They won't know our pain. We've laid the groundwork. I am one that believes that I'm planting a tree that I will never sit under the shade, but for some reason, I've been blessed to sit under the shade a little bit.
Nice. Well, the people in the industry are basically mostly good people. I lost my wallet at the Cup and dropped out of my pocket when I fell over on my scooter while I was going around rolling over one of the many bumps to keep the wires from. Had quite a bit of money in it, had my entire life in it. I didn't realize it until the last part of the day that it was gone. I was kind of bummed. I didn't know how to feel about it. And 3 days later, a package arrived in the mail, and I had a lump, and I pulled it open and dumped it on the table, and it was my wallet with all of the money and everything there. And the most beautiful note from the guys who found it said, "Hey, John, we found your wallet and its contents near the trash can right next to my booth. I don't know if this would reach you safely, but here's the wallet and call this number and I will get your cash back to you immediately, John and Chris." A couple of really sweet guys sent back all of it, man. And this was, if this would have been at any other fair or whatever, it would have been a gone gorgonzola for sure. But people at these events are people like the rest of us that are trying to rise up and not be the scenario that they're constantly pointing a finger at us as criminals, crooks, ne'er-do-wells, and so forth. If we were ne'er-do-wells, this industry wouldn't have climbed to the point where it's at right now. In the face of all negativity and in the face of the politicians who are trying to remain power, in the face of the people who constantly talk bad about pot, we've still risen to the point where we're at. I went to a big giant fair, lost the wallet with a couple of G's in it, and it came back in the mail. Tell me that the people in this community aren't good people. I mean, it's just not going to play with me at all.
That's pretty awesome, dude. That's really nice to hear. It's good. Those are always opportunities when you find a wallet full of money. And unfortunately, often people think the opportunity is, oh, I found a bunch of money. But really the opportunity is to do the right thing, to be good, and to, send it back to where it belongs. It's not yours.
That's the whole thing about the whole community, is exactly what you just said, Mark. They're accusing us of trying to make a bunch of money. There are some people in the industry doing that. Let's face it. There are people in the industry who would steal flies from a blind spider, okay? And I'm the first one to admit that. But the majority of the people in the community are good people. And they're trying to do the right thing. And that constant pressure of trying to do the right thing back in the face of this oppression is what's going to save us. Now, look, the VA is starting to tremble a little bit because there's so many vets right now crying back to the government. The vet death rate from suicide for PTSD is rising as we speak. And there's people who are trying to combat it. And yeah, there's people trying to combat it as we speak, but you've got a lot of people out there who think that the little tiny caveat of pot that it gets you high, in addition to all the healing stuff it does, is driving the rest of us crazy. It does something good, and just because you get a little high while it's doing it, people don't want us to have that. But they'll drink and they'll smoke and they'll drive their cars fast and all the rest of the things that are truly a danger. They all have guns. I'm sick and tired of guns. I got shot by one in Vietnam, so you can imagine. I don't have one. I don't want one. Don't even want them anywhere near me. And so, and not change subjects quickly. The terpenes, they were listed there in parts per millions, but that wasn't the point. The list was long, and there were many, many terpenes on that list that I haven't seen on other lists yet, even if they were just there in parts per million. It points out to the fact that as our technology grows and we're able to advance in our understanding, we're picking up new terpenes. We're picking up terpenes that we previously haven't been picking up. And I'm just always for advancing this whole deal as much as possible. If there's a new piece of information, let's dote on it. Somebody blowing their
What
nose.
terpenes were Indra, if you wouldn't mind, what were some of the terpenes you were just describing that you were seeing that aren't currently being tested for by some of the labs?
That's what's tested in a lab in Oregon. And let's see here. Just a minute.
Did you send it to me on an email or something? Is that how you sent it to me?
I sent it to you on your email, yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. So maybe I can screen share it or something. I don't know.
I'd be really psyched to see that and look into it, and if I may real quick chime in on that, and to your point, Andrew, I think it's such a huge one because there is such there's the terpene science and such is such a new frontier, and the alcohol esters and the kind of compounds that are there in tiny part per million amounts seem to and like what we were talking about earlier with the spice comparison and how a certain amount of salt will do something to a mixture and then steam and eventually change the entire profile of the soup. It's really interesting in how much the certain things in tiny amounts are substantially affecting the overall. But what I would say that really complicates a lot of this whole kind of conversation, which really sucks up to this point, is the need for this for the standardization of laboratory data to be able to make apples to apples comparisons, because up to this point, unfortunately, what we've seen in so much of the terpene testing that's done is oftentimes kind of complete wrong terpenes being quantified or reported from an unverified or unvalidated terpene kind of run on a GC. And my greatest example of that is one of the biggest labs in California for so long has been putting kind of out these terpene profiles, showing and, suggesting that pinene, alpha pinene, was the terpene dominant in all these ranged strains from Jack to Trainwreck to XJ to J1 Dutch Treat to Durban to, Sage. And that's completely wrong, and from that unvalidated terpene run and that amount of publicly displayed the data of this wrong terpene as the primary terpene in this whole class of strains, they really kind of took a hit, in some of their scientific integrity, and unfortunately, in most states, including California, including Oregon, unfortunately, terpene testing isn't yet a test that is being required to go through a further accreditation proficiency testing process, to be able to do that test. So, and because in Oregon, Oregon really set a standard, an amazing standard, and California's following it. And it was that, okay, if you're going to regulate and have strong kind of, limits and regulations on the producers and processors of products in these regulated markets, you actually have to have an even stricter level of scrutiny and regulation on the laboratories that are doing the testing. So Oregon was the first state to substantiate that through their regulations. California's following them. And what they're requiring is that, in Oregon, a lab has to go through basically this group called ORLAP, the Oregon Laboratory Assessment Program. And they have to go through ORLAP they have to go through ORLAP basically and do a proficiency testing process to show and substantiate to this laboratory evaluation program, that they can do the levels of testing that are going to be required for them to do, and to pick up these compounds in these amounts, in these mixtures, and these different spike matrices.
Well, I this one particular lab that I used, I don't know if you've heard of them or not, but it's MRX Labs, and they did a pretty thorough testing of it. They came up with alpha pinene, campine, myrcene, beta pinene, 3-carine, alpha terpenine, limonene, osamine, gamma terpene, terpinolene, linalool, isopulegol, geranol, beta carfethylene, humulene, norolidol, transnorolidol, guaiol, and alpha bizidul, which was a fairly complete list of a
good list
of a lot of terpenes. And
yeah, absolutely. That's a great list.
I learned a lot from these guys. I learned a lot about the terpenes. For one, if you're not careful when you store your terpenes, different stuff happens to the terpene.
Absolutely.
Next thing you know, you start finding isopropanol and acetone in your terpenes. And that's because some of the terpenes thermally degrade into those compounds.
Right.
And you got to keep them in an amber bottle, and you got to keep them cool. Otherwise, they start going off. That's the whole problem with shelf life. One of the bottles that I carried around with me at the cup in my pocket and for 4 days was in the heat, I sent in to them, and immediately it came back and it had all this other garbage in it, which blew my mind. I was like, isopropanol, there's no way that could possibly, because I collected these terpenes using our new machine, the Blue Meanie, and it refrigerates down to -20 pretty easy, and so we were getting copious amounts of terpenes. But when I sent that in, it came back with a little bit tiny amount of acetone and isopropanol in it, and that just blew my mind. And so I did it over again, and then I sent that back into them, and it came clean. And then I talked a lot with Clancy of Callahan, the guy at Scientific 710, where they make the machine, and they had the same thing. And I found a number of people now that I've been looking that have come up with the same info about the terpenes, that you've got to be careful how you keep them. You've got to you've got to look into the ones that you've got. You know, we found a couple of terpenes that are very interesting. We've been separating them out as best as possible. We've come up with a vasodilator. All you have to do is smell it. You stick it under your nose and take like 3 or 4 deep breaths. You can feel your face get warm. You can feel your hands get warm. It's opening the blood flow all over your body. We found a bronchial dilator, 3-4 breaths of it, and I have 2 friends who are on these asthma things, and they're using this bronchial dilator terpene now, and they think it's the hottest thing since sunburn. They don't want to be removed from it. And I think if we can start getting a really complete feed out on these terpenes, one of the things that I was doing that somebody wasn't happy about, but when I decarb for people occasionally, and when they want the stuff decarbed, I always put the terpene collector between the vacuum oven, which is what I use for decarbing, and the vacuum pump. And about around 75 or 80 milliliters of golden terpenes. But within those terpenes are the ones that will thermally degrade, so you have to be very careful with it. I've been on an aggressive program separating them as much as possible. I found one method of getting the isopropanol and the acetone out is put 3 or 4 drops of water in with the bottle of terpene, shake it up good, put it in the separatory funnel, drain the water off, because both the acetone and the isopropanol will go into the water phase of that, and then you can separate them and have your terpenes clean. But I'm pretty sure that it's going to take a lot of time and effort to find out how to combine these terpenes with the various oils to come up with the effects. And I'm going to try to work on that somewhat this year, now that I know that I've got a source to collect terpenes the way I need and want to collect them.
You know, what's unique about these degradations of terpenes is they're probably not only going to happen on their own when collected, but they could potentially also happen in the gland heads while they're you know, in cured bud or old bud. You know, these are,
man, that's such an awesome thing you said, because that really connected for me kind of this interesting kind of, you know, weird thing that we've been seeing that might be adding to both your points, and that's that, you know, in certain flour and extracts, you know, oftentimes we will see these small kind of trace residual solvent levels that are present that are not used or should be there kind of in general. And so kind of, yeah, fascinating kind of work, Indra, on what you're doing and seeing, because yeah, that's from what we see, absolutely, for the analytical reference standards that we have of these different terpenes, it's so important how they're stored and how the calibration ladders are built and the runs develop, because it's so they're so sensitive that they kind of seem to break down really quickly in these different conditions, you know. And then to you know what you were just saying, Marcus, with the flours, you know, there might be these weird endogenous levels of certain compounds that are there, you know, that might be happening from different, you know, overheated kind of, you know, rooms, or, you know, just different kind of, you know, processes that are being done, you know, on the plant, and then in the extraction.
Alec, let me ask you a question. One of the things I've been thinking about for a long time, they've talked about it on the church here quite a bit, about what's in the stem of the plant, what's in the leaf, and then how it goes into the little factory of the trichrome and manifests ultimately in the head of the trichrome. All of that, while I was listening to it, made me realize that that must mean that when you extract the plant, or when you separate that out, that there's going to be a race mix in there of the pre-stuff, the stuff, and the after stuff going on. And it's going to be, as we start using finer and finer equipment to analyze what's coming out in these extractions, you're going to start seeing little ticks here and there. I know that recently somebody pointed out at one of the research labs that there's a bit of butane naturally in the heads. And so there must be a mix of things that we haven't entirely paid attention to yet. And I'm hoping that with the new lab certifications and the new requirements for people working in the lab, we'll start getting some real information.
That's awesome. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
So, Alec, do you think now with the, I know you were trying to, with this new competition with the Cannabis County Fair, going with that type of, you know, terpene classification where, you know, grouping them together, et cetera. How were you involved in that decision-making process to arrive at that point, or was that something that was brought forth by the Cannabis Country Fair? Because I can see competition.
It was largely me.
Okay, well, I can see by having that type of classification, you can start to drive other labs into other competitions into raising their standards so that they can speak of this competition. Because even such as when I was over in Barcelona this year for Spanibus, I talked to them, and of course, you know, they were testing their cannabis that was in the competitions that I was involved in, but they were only testing, of course, for THC content or CBD. They didn't have any type of anything else beyond that. It's like, well, are you guys looking to step your game up? And they're like, yes, absolutely. By seeing what's happening in the United States, it causes them to put pressure on their laboratories there to start pushing them to that they can be at the standards. Because I have to give, you know, Barcelona props. Their quality has grown exponentially, as well as their testing ability. But it also shows that there's still holes in the system. So, but it also shows through what, you know, the Cannabis Country Fair was trying to do with its competition. I hope it spreads into potentially Emerald Cup and into. I take it that Cannabis Country Fair will happen then next year, next summer, at a more reasonable date and time, and
with more time planned and kind of effort put into it. Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
and
good.
You know, and I really appreciate those words. You know, because you know, in such a large way. I mean, I have such deep love and admiration, respect for Tim Taylor Blake, and how much they personally have been mentors involved in my life, and why I'm with and in the cannabis community, and why SC Labs exists, and so being involved. You know, I mean, I've been working with the Emerald Cup for the last 10 years, and you know, since I moved out here and Taylor and I were living up at Area 101 and involved, kind of organic farming and life changing in every way. Which was after I got out of the Navy, but kind of being involved in the cup and seeing it grow and seeing it get to the point where there's now 800 plus flower entries last year. I mean, it gets to the point where all of a sudden the integrity of the overall judging, what might be even like a really strong kind of plan from the top, and how the judging is going to be done, it really kind of brings a lot of questions overall to how people can even judge that, and how people can kind of make similar, kind of judging criteria if they're smoking that many strains a day. And so, in so many ways, kind of just, the judging process is involved in just like the overall quality, the look, feel, the bag appeal, the trim, kind of, how, if it's sticky and still cured, and just all these different aspects kind of go into judging, but you can't deny the importance of the chemometric data, cannabinoids and terpenes, and in so many ways, with what we saw with this terpene classification system, I was really kind of, going to Tim, hoping that, hoping that eventually it can kind of evolve into the Emerald Cup. But with the Cannabis Country Fair, it was going to be a lot smaller of a total sample set, so that we could try this out for just in general, try it out just as an experiment to see how well it works in the judging. Because the idea was going to be, besides micro are going to be run, residual solvents, and if anything's out of spec, then it was going to get disqualified. Anything else that was qualified, basically was going to get sent through this algorithm for terpenes, cannabinoids, and then sorted into these different primary and subgroups, and then they were hopefully going to be given to the entrants, in these already sorted groups, so that you can make similar judging against similar smelling or similar profiled bud, hoping that the data wouldn't necessarily bias all the other judging attributes, but it hopefully would help inform.
Well, it definitely helps inform because it separates the wheat from the chaff. I mean, everybody used to, look at the size of my bud. I got a great donkey dick. Well, that's great and all, but what does the data now say? Right. So now we can see what's actually inside there. So, it no longer is size that matters. It's what do your terps say, and what's their retention, and, on top of the THC content, CBD, and looking for, all those things you're trying to find that will
stuff, and I think also, and I'm sorry, just to finish the point, also, it's like, I think also, one of the big efforts was like hoping to, celebrate by, through using or identifying these different categories and giving awards to these different smell groups, you'll be able to, in a way, help to celebrate and bring out the diversity of cannabis, because so many times what we've seen in the Emerald Cup is people would enter some like really interesting and unique kind of novel strains that would actually they would be complete outliers to the entire data set and should probably get an award, but because nobody even knew what it was, it couldn't even get judged. And so, and a couple of examples of this would be some weird landrace strains that were like 1-to-1 THC, 1-to-1 THC to THCV. There's this like Black Beauty strain out right now in California, 1-to-1. And a lot of the barren strains kind of are bred around or from that. And so, at the time, nobody even knew to judge it or what have you. And so it just kind of slipped through the cracks. And so, with being able to kind of put things into these buckets and then give awards in place, you can also then too, identify these really unique novel aspects that people might enter. And then, through that, help to breed out that overall kind of terpene into the broader market.
And elevate it to the public as well, as which of course causes further market saturation of the diversity of products that have since come out. I mean, look, since CBD has been resynthesized, and look at the plethora of products on the market that have spilled forth just off that one compound alone. Not saying it's good or bad, etc. I'm just pointing out causality.
Exactly. Well, what about, guys, when it shows up, and it will, believe me, constructed concentrates? That is, concentrates constructed from really extremely fine oils and terpenes collected separately but mixed back in and offered as in the concentrate contest. What are you going to do about that when that shows up?
That's already been showing up. It's happened already. People have been kicked out of the cups because of that, at least the high times.
And Indra also, I was making this point kind of earlier before you jumped on, and I mean, if anybody that might figure it out, I would imagine you probably would be one of them. But from what we see mostly, it's like whenever people are attempting to take all these, other flound-derived terpenes and then re-add them or reintroduce them in certain concentrations to, a distillate or some other type of product, typically it doesn't work out well for them, and if you compare that side to side, the sauce, live resin, holy water, natural terp extraction, kind of preserve, extract, or, rosin with like natural terps re-added, blended. I mean, it's crazy how much the natural game's getting, and the synthetic kind of or reintroduced game doesn't seem like it's quite as perfected yet, and you can usually typically pull it out side by side and immediately kind of be like, oh, that's not like this.
Well, probably 99.9% of them don't know their ass from a hole in the ground, and they're overdoing it, and they're pouring too much stuff in, and they don't really understand the rules around combining something back together anyway. So they're never going to figure it out. They're going to always tip the thing. And Darren, there's two of you. That just means it's twice as good. But hey, anyway, these people will mix these things, and they're grady, and the grade is the universal blindfold. And yeah, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but can it be done? You bet. I already did it, and if I wanted to, I could. I don't want to play that, man. That's not it. I think we should have a category being judged there of just pure terpenes. I know when Tony, when I bumped into him at the cup, he just wanted to dab the terpenes. He didn't want any of the oil. He just stuck in and dabbed the terpenes along. In fact, about 30 or 40 people just wanted to do it that way. And
that's a good call. I think there's a need actually for that. I mean, there's, I know with the Emerald Cup and with and even the Hitman crew. I mean, I think the Hitman crew with like Chalice and stuff. I need to go back and look, but they might actually be having a certain terpene category this year in their event in July. But that's it's one of the fascinating things. I think a lot of the really novel innovations within the community are kind of almost pushing the need for these novel, unique categories to be, kind of populated. But it's only once there's enough of that demand within the kind of cups or within the market or the judging, I think that begets the need for that to be created in the event. But I mean, absolutely, I think that time is now.
I don't think there's anything wrong with created concentrates. I mean, one of my favorite ones is I take Jack and I mix it with Tony and Bubble Man's banana straw nana goo, and I mix that with Jack, and I put that in my dabber and dab it, and it's a delightful combination, man. I mean, I think there should be room for combining things, be it terpenes and oils or whatever, and judging them, because there's some fantastic ones out there. I'm just in love with some of the stuff I picked up while I was there.
That's awesome.
But going back to what you were saying, Alec, it was our demand of testing in labs in the first place that started, we started going in those directions. So
right,
there's a causality of demand, so we can then propagate. That's the reality, is that we have to spend our hard-earned money, and it costs. People don't realize how much it costs the Emerald Cup to test those 800 flowers or the 1,000 plus. And now add any type of other testing, as costs you more to do, which means it costs me more to get done by you. However, the more that gets out there, the more the questions that are asked and get out there, and then these other laboratories start ring testing, and next thing you know, you've got a community that is well tested, and you can feel very good about taking those next steps, so that we can add, because as we started off with THC, and now we're stepping into all these complete and other boundaries that are opening up even more doorways and more pathways.
What are you doing, man? No, at the end, you know, I apologize. This is going through, we're having a little construction done in our lab. It's kind of, I didn't realize it was loud. So kind of, I appreciate your point incredibly because, you know, I think not enough tribute is given to some of these events and how much they are actually influencing and affecting, you know, the culture and the industry. And you know, it wasn't until the Emerald Cup kind of took on this level of burden and testing and money to do the testing so that they could help substantiate their event that some of these interesting realizations about pesticides and extraction processes and all this, you know, was actually even an issue, you know, going back a couple of years in California. And you know, then kind of Hitman crew with Chalice and Happy Place, you know, kind of did something very similar, and now have this commitment to doing that level of testing to help qualify or disqualify samples. But in the process of people being disqualified and having somewhat of public shaming, you know, or an Instagram trolling of their brand because they failed for pesticides in this public event, you know, I know so many from my, you know, kind of insight, or biggest players or biggest kind of you know, kind of brands within California cannabis community, you know, evolve their ways, cut things out of their program like Phosphaload or Bushmaster or certain systemic fungicides and pesticides, you know, because they took it so personally from failing the Emerald Cup or failing Chalice. And so I think, you know, yeah, not enough kind of props is given to, you know, the judges and the people, you know, helping with the events that are pushing the boundaries in a lot of ways, you know, that getting people ready for what is to come with regulation.
Well, the people want they want the truth. They want to know what they're seeing is proper, and they want people to follow the right things. And it is shown because we've seen whole different sociological experiments crop up in our community because of social media and testing and failures or successes that were successes until the test came out and then it came out and that they failed. Then those types of public shaming. These are things that we've never really seen in our community because we never had a standard. There was never a shelf that we could say, hey, that THC is actually that. So it has changed the discussion. And it really goes back, and I got to forever give props to, you know, the first ones to really put out were Harborside to in Oakland to really put out THC, and it caused an initial stir because it caused a problem because I started to see vendors coming my way saying, hey, what I was getting for this amount of money for, I can't get anymore because the testing says it's this number down here, where in the past they were getting it at this amount of money with no problem at all, going off of their organoleptic, which is their visual cues, et cetera, they could see. Whereas science has literally separated the wheat from the chaff because we now have a standard that we can look to and hold on to and grasp onto. And thank you for being a pioneer in that, and thank you for holding yourself to the scientific standards so that we can all rise together equally.
Hey, Alex, do you guys post all your lab test results on a public board? And if you don't, would you consider doing so?
You know, so for the last few years, actually, you know, we had this tested button on our website, and then you could click that, and any data that a client had that we work with or a collective that we work with had done, if they click and made the sample public, you know, then, you know, it was basically viewable on this aspect of the website. Within the last few months, for what it's worth, we temporarily kind of took it down until we could figure out a better way to do it. Because what we found is there's like 3 groups that were from different parts of like United States and one part, you know, one from outside of the country that were basically mining our website and just they had kind of, I guess they had just like some scripts written to where they were basically just taking every data point and just mining it from our site, and had like, you know, these trackers that would just basically, anytime somebody would make a sample public, they would basically be pulling the data. And so, you know, yeah, we just, you know, basically took that down in an effort to try to refigure out how we can relaunch the public display without basically getting pirated for the data. You know, because for what it's worth, I mean, in so many ways, the data is like not as valuable, I guess, as a lot of people would think. You know, and the project we've been working on, this terpene classification system, you know, there's going to be many systems that are launched. You know, there's already a couple out there. You know, Mark Lewis is the best there is at this point, and you know, and we're not looking to replace it. We're looking just at have a system that we can basically, you know, have our clients and people that we work with be able to use to better, you know, further help them understand and value the data that we provide. You know, and
I love that old color graphics you had about the terpenes was great. I was kind of hoping you were going to bring something like that back.
That is, and that absolutely, you know, there we are, you know, taking kind of our current graphic displays of terpenes and charts and colors, and you know, launching that to a new level, and should have that launched in the next couple, you know, in the next month or two with with our terpene classification system, and hoping that the, you know, colors can help to, you know, intuitively bring out some of these complex kind of terpene, you know, data points, like, you know, because it's really hard for a lot of subset of the, you know, community to, you know, start to really understand or even be able to pronounce terpinolene or beta-caryophyllene, these different terpenes, and then let alone kind of understand how certain ones might be affecting, you know, working with THC to affect the strain in a certain way or another. So hopefully, you know, with the, you know, the system is to add a little bit more clarity and just you know, bring more, you know, light to the rainbow of effects and variants that cannabis has. You know, and also, and just the last point of that is, you know, to understand how unique certain things are. Because, you know, whenever, you know, most strains of cannabis that we have and pass through, and most of the subgroups and there's a primary, but most of the subgroups are within, you know, the myrcene class, because that's the biggest and most primary class. Myrcene seems to be the most dominant terpene around. But you know, there's this other primary group that has, you know, 1/10 of the total data points, but there's enough samples to signify the need for its own primary grouping, and that's alpha pinene. You know, you very rarely see alpha pinene as the dominant terpene, but, you know, is.
Oh, did we lose you, Alec?
Yeah,
Did we lose you?
I didn't catch him.
Oh, well, I'm sure he'll be back in a flash. He's, yeah, you know, one of the things I wanted to mention was, you know, we're just, okay, for 20 years or so, there's been some terpene talk, a little bit less thanks to Sam and his experiment in early 2000. But I wonder how, you know, beta-caryophyllene is the terpene that drug dogs are tested for, correct?
Well, that they smell the most, or that they test for. That might.
I thought they were trained with it. I thought that they trained drug dogs with beta-caryophyllene.
As far as I know, that is true.
Okay,
Correct.
right. So I heard this as well. So that's interesting that, like, probably when most people in the cannabis world didn't even know what beta-caryophyllene was, somehow the police knew what it was and knew to train their drug dogs with it. They had terpene knowledge before us.
Well, that's because, Mark, there's a lot of beta-caryophyllene in pot. And in those days, they probably were only measuring, I don't know, Sam will probably tell me I'm wrong on this, but I think they were only measuring for a few of the terpenes. By the police labs went to the other labs and asked them, hey, what should we look into? And they said, well, alpha pinene, beta-caryophyllene, linalool, any of those might be good candidates because there's a lot of them present in the terpene count on that. But carry on. Went blank.
No worries. I'm not sure what happened with Alec there. I guess he'll probably be back in a little bit. Todd said he's out for the day and will see us next week with beta-caryophyllene. There you go. Yeah. Guild Extract said we should give all the car window washers at the Mexican border spray bottles with beta-caryophyllene.
Yeah.
That was the joke on the ferry here, actually, for some years. One year, they just, on the BC ferry from the Sunshine Coast, they did this big thing where they just, like, brought drug dogs on the ferry, walked through the area, and, like, busted a few people with pounds. And so the big joke was to take, 5-gallon batches of bubble water and just like pour it on down the ferry floor.
Better yet, drive up by the cop cars with a spray bottle, roll your window down, spray the tires on the street side of it, and every time that the police cars go back in the compound and the canine dogs come out to get in them, they'll go fucking nuts over the tires on the police cars.
Mm. You know what? I'm just glad to slowly but surely be moving away from even having to, you're definitely not figuring out valuable, say, terpene profile and how it interacts with the endocannabinoid system and how to, put your body better at ease. If you're focused on how to smuggle, how to get away from the police, how to evade, how to, this is insane. Court, costs, lawyers, these two things need to be disconnected forever because.
Somebody voted for it.
What's that?
Somebody voted for it, though, didn't they?
I don't know. I'm not one of those people that believes voting actually gets anyone into power.
Yeah, I think politicians believe in the old, you can fool some of the people some of the time. You can fool all of the people some of the time. But they don't like to believe in you can't fool all the people all the time.
Right. Well, that's the system that we seem to be living in anyway.
Well, they fixed that, Sam. The way they fixed that is the ones that they can't fool, they get put in jail for smoking pot.
Or they just say that it's illegal to not be fooled all the time.
Yeah.
And what about this gentleman from New Jersey, the New Jersey med man, this dude with the dreads that's constantly getting arrested and in trouble from the police? I guess they jailed him again. New Jersey. I might be getting his name wrong. Do you know him, Etienne? This activist?
I don't know him. I know of him, the New Jersey weed man. He's kind of always been on the front lines, and he gets out there and waves it in their face, and is fearless. And yeah, they have, as we all know, as Todd has found out firsthand and others have, when they want to fuck with you, they will make your life a living fucking hell. And they have unfortunately made New Jersey and Weed Man's life hell. And he's trying to do his best out there on the East Coast with the draconian laws that are there. But I'm hearing that New Jersey has a governor, somebody running for governor against Chris Christie, who is cannabis friendly and wants to legalize cannabis in New Jersey. And look, I went to West Virginia University, as people used to say, it's the New Jersey University, because it was just far enough away for the kids from New Jersey to get away from their parents. Their parents couldn't sneak up on them, but they could also, it was a partying school as well. So, but New Jersey really needs it. Their economy could help it. And
remember the motto of the state, New Jersey, the Garden State.
Exactly. Hempstead, New Jersey, even, Hempstead.
It says that on the license plates, the garbage state?
No, the garden.
I'm just joking.
No, the garbage state. No, that's, I'm not sure which one that one is.
Idaho.
I'm just making a New Jersey joke. I got love for my New Jersey peeps. Come on, they got that joke. It was funny. The New Jersey Turnpike is garbage. Come on.
But last I heard, New Jersey Weed Man was still getting fucked with, and I have no idea where this saga lies currently, but I wish him luck all the time. But he's pissed off the local cops and the state cops.
Dude, he's on a hunger strike, this Ed Forchion, the New Jersey Weed Man. 2 weeks into a hunger strike right now. And then we can't not mention Peter Tosh's son right now, who's also been beaten in prison into a coma. They beat him into a coma, and he's in there for joints, herb. He got caught with herb, and he was doing 6 months and got into this big, got a big beating put on him, and he's in a coma. So yeah, you guys can Google that and find out what's going on with that. Support to the Tosh family. Brutal. Peter Tosh had also been beaten many a time. I'm not sure if he ever gotten beat into a coma, but he definitely got smoked and cracked. They cracked his head open a good few times with batons. I believe it happened in America, the Tosh's son. Let me just do a quick quick Google so I can give you a little bit more. Beaten in Tacoma in New Jersey jail. Damn.
I think that's a Garden State.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sam.
By the jailers. It doesn't necessarily have to be the prisoners that beat him up. The same people who beat people up all the time hang them in their cells. Mysterious hangings, of course. And people die in their cells from lack of water. Not too long ago, the black guy who was going to join Homeland Security, it came out that a pregnant woman died of thirst in his jail. And so then he said, well, I'm not going to take that job now. I mean, like you could,
Jesus.
like you could get it in the first place after starving and killing people. I mean,
the torture state.
Yeah, what goes on here in this country anymore passes for civility, and we call ourselves civilized. And Mahatma Gandhi, when they asked him, what do you think about civilization in America? And he said, I think it would be a good idea.
Jesus. Damn. Yeah. Well, that's crazy that we were talking about New Jersey, and then that's where young Tosh got beaten.
I don't think Mahatma Gandhi ever went to America. I know he went to London, and he was.
No, they asked him. They just asked him in an interview what it was they said, what do you think about the West, which claims to be civilized? And he said, I think it would be a good idea. You can find it online if you look enough. He didn't have to come to America to say that either, by the way.
I'm sure enough of America came to him. Or maybe not. I have no idea. I wasn't there. I do know this much. It's time for
Bong Rip.
Damn. Darren, you sleeping, Darren?
No, I was just letting Indra out.
Just letting ear. He just cut your grass hard, bro.
He did. Just Bong Rip. Boom. Just nice.
Well, you know what?
Okay, man. We can share that Bong Rip line across the planet. Bong Rip, everyone can say it.
Yeah, true enough. Peter S says it upside down every time. How about that? He's got
Cubans sift and attends pipe. Thank you.
Chunk and a chi. How about that?
That's your pipe now, sir. And a beautiful D-Rec and Hitman pipe that it is.
It is the best. I've had a couple of 3-4 different pipes given to me since then, and they're all sitting on the shelf somewhere, and I still only use this one. I did put a D-nail on it because, well, lazy. I'm lazy, so I put a D-nail on it, and now it's ready all the time. But that didn't change the fact that it hits amazingly, and every single time I pick it up and hit it, I think about you, my friend.
Well, many blessings. I'm glad you get much use and joy out of it. It's a great designed pipe. Shout out to D-Rec who did the design on the outside. And yeah, Dougie and them dude designed some good pipes, and that one hits like a fucking champ. So I'm glad it's being used all the time.
Every day, at least 10 hours a day. I miss you guys at the cup, but I got a bottle of terpenes for you guys to try that I've been keeping in the freezer. And I want to sooner or later get it to you because everybody that tried it, Tony bang off it, looked at me and he said, we need to talk. So I think it's pretty good.
It's always more effective to let those who have complimented you be the ones who compliment you.
Tony's not here, so I had to blow my
I know, but that's what I'm saying. When you blow your own horn, it sounds like 20%. But if Tony was in here saying that, you'd get the full 100% out of the value of that comment. I'm just saying.
I got you. I heard he already did mention it. So
I've invited him a bunch of times today. I wanted him to come in for the terpene conversation, but he's busy. I think Sunday's like one day he can actually probably get a little bit of a rest. Although I wouldn't even be surprised if he's fucking moving or doing, not even in the country or something.
Well, also, too, you were talking about, Marcus, you were talking about, the effects of the minor terpenes as on the effect of the major terpenes, how they're affecting cannabinoids. And That's absolutely true. When I did analysis of skunk number one, I found over 50 different terpenes, and there was a few peaks that I wasn't able to ID. But so I mean, there might have easily been 60, including minor terpenes, and that's quite a suite of a smell.
There must have been certain ones that were just constantly there, or was it more in the cannabinoid spikes? Because I remember you saying in the past that you were able to sort of distinguish by seeing a GC test of something, whether it had some skunk in it.
That's because it had a particular profile. It was high in myrcene, limonene, and I don't remember what else right now, but you could very easily, if you had a GC of a Thai and the GC of a skunk and the GC of an Afghan, and then you crossed them in some way, the offspring, you could easily tell what families they were originating from, what progeny they were grown, because the profiles of the GC just spelled it out really clearly.
Well, if you on the test that I had done, the things that were in there in greater quantity was alpha pinene, myrcene, little beta caryophyllene. By the way, pronouncing these things, I found the key to it is simply get a clothespin and put it on your bottom lip, and you can pronounce them correctly.
All good questions. Guild Extracts. We'll have to get him in here next week. He's got lots of good things to say. He's talking about how we can, discover different pesticides and terpenes peaking at the same time as some pesticides and giving false positive negatives. Fortunately, Alex is no longer here. We didn't get Mark Scoldone today, so I'll try to line up Alec again, get Guild in the room, have Mark, maybe get Chimera, and have a nice, good, longer conversation about these particular things for sure. It's definitely a point of interest, as we move forward.
A little work we've been doing is the silicon gel filter, properly configured in the extraction unit, will pull insecticides out of the extraction.
Excellent.
I'm not sure if that's a good thing that you're cleaning up extract with insecticides in it. I mean, to be honest, I'm happy it can be done, but I don't want to be part of that game. What the fuck are they putting insecticides on it?
Well, I just am mentioning it because it's a fact. I'm not advertising. We have it within our system, which goes unnamed and unmentioned hereabouts anyway. But I discovered that does that. And so I always say to people, well, before you extract, you should have the stuff tested so you know whether or not you have to defeat insecticide or not, because I wouldn't do it as a regular thing. And I wouldn't advertise that you should do it as a regular thing. People should start testing from the moment the plant comes out of the ground or gets harvested, By the time it gets to the concentrate maker, it should already have a clean bill of health, because everything that goes to the concentrate maker will do exactly what that says, concentrated.
That is how it works. Concentrate the good with the bad, unfortunately. Best to make sure that you just got the good in the first place. Have a little bit of integrity. Have a lot of integrity, actually. Have a lot of integrity. It's worth it. It doesn't affect quality. It doesn't affect quality. Like integrity does not affect quality of cannabis.
I've patented it a new way. It's just you spray it on. It's really fast.
Oh, nice. Like just at the end of flowering, you just spray it everywhere?
Yeah, you spray it everywhere.
Spray on integrity? Is that what we're talking about?
I don't even know. We're just being, sometimes Sam's humor will just, I don't even understand it, but I laugh anyway because it's funny. But I don't understand it always.
It's alien humor.
It's alien humor for certain. You are definitely an alien, I would say that much. Well, it's a lovely Sunday afternoon. Maybe.
He's got enough Dutch humor rubbing off on him to say some of these things. I know Dutch jokes are decidedly different.
Well,
Funny.
some of the world's top comics are from Holland. Oh wait, no, they're not.
You mean Canada?
I don't know. I think we have like I don't think we're the funniest. I think we got a few. We got a few.
We got a lot, man. There's a ton of funny people from Canada. Yourself included.
John Candy, he was pretty funny.
John Candy, Jim Carrey. There's just a lot of them.
Mike Myers.
Mike Myers. Anyway, proportionately, Canada comes up with more funny people than they do here in the USA. The funny people that come up here in the USA are people like Jeff Sessions, who by the way, who recently lauded the Filipino Duarte guy who's been killing people like crazy. Sessions lauded his efforts to clean up the Philippines.
Jesus.
That's fucking ominous, man.
Yeah, it's not too good when you got someone like basically going for the mass murder record. And then
I think he did it.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. That was some disturbing imagery that came out of that, of people just getting blown away on the streets. That's a level of prohibition that wow. I mean, holy, that's heavy
Some
duty.
of them might have even been drug users.
You know, you're spoiled when you're worried about like what's written in the proposition or the latest release of the federal licensing, when people are literally getting like shot in the back.
Did you know that the Philippines legalized medical marijuana at the same time?
I did indeed hear that. I remember hearing a friend of mine saying that he was going to be going there for a meeting, and I said, "What now?" I said, "What now?" I was like, geez, I sure wouldn't be going for that meeting. I'll tell you. I'll stick with Jamaica. You know what? Even when it was illegal and they were bashing them over the skulls, they were still fighting for it. Those are my people.
Hey, didn't the Chinese just built about a $20 billion new highway system in Jamaica?
Oh, the Chinese are always building crazy highway systems in Jamaica. Yeah, they definitely, I don't know how much they spent on it, but there's definitely one that goes from like close to Kingston, like all the way into Ochi, and it's quick compared to how it used to be. You have to do this real crazy thing. And in fact, John, I can tell you a story that while Tony and I were driving with our partners from Kingston to a property just past Ochos Rios, we ended up on that highway late at night, and we ended up getting to a point where it was blocked off. There was a guy standing there, like a flag guy, and it was late, like dark late. And so we pull up, and I'm like, damn, we're going to have to go back. This is going to be so long. And Tony and I are kind of huffing and puffing a bit. And our partner's like, don't worry. He gets out. He kind of pays this guy off a little bit. The guy moves the cone, and we drive through this like rubble and work, like fully under construction highway. We're now driving through the construction. Driving for about 20 minutes, and we end up at a dead end. It's all rubble, and this little car we're in can't drive over the rubble. Maybe a big truck could, but the car can't. So we try to figure out turning around. We go back to where the flag guy is, and my business partner who's driving the car basically does a U-turn onto the other side of the highway, which is the wrong side of the highway. And we drive the rest of the way down the wrong side of the highway, going like 120 kilometers an hour. It was definitely a pretty wild experience. That was before that highway got finished. It was nuts.
Sounds like a Disneyland ride that I went on once.
I'll tell you, it was. They were calm. They were just like, listen, it's not a problem. And in the end, it really wasn't, but we didn't understand that. We were kind of like, this seems like this is a problem. Like, I'm sorry, but going down the highway the wrong way. But you know what? Lo and behold, they were right. And they got us there totally safely without any weird experiences. But holy shit, that was insane. Only in Jamaica. I love Jamaica. Honestly, I love Jamaica.
Hey, can you take taxis for super long distance rides there cheap?
Oh yeah, well any car will be a taxi, and it's just a matter of knowing the prices, because obviously if you're just a tourist well, then that's you're a valuable opportunity for people who don't make a lot of money to maybe make a little bit of money off of you, because that's what tourism is in Jamaica. It's extremely, I think it's one of the biggest ways that money comes to the island. So you'd have to probably be there for a while and really understand how to jump into a cab and just go like, an hour and a half up the road or whatever for a few bucks.
Hey, did you see the new IACM that came out today about CBD reduces blood pressure in healthy people?
I swallow 2 huge capsules of it every single day. I've been doing that for about 7 months now, and my blood pressure, I used to be on 4 blood pressure medicines because my atrium is enlarged and I have an enlarged heart. And now I'm down to 2 plus an occasional other one. And I can tell you that the only real thing that constantly consuming CBD. So I'm all with that particular study. I believe in it.
Well, the great thing, it's Oxford. It's not just anyone. This is done at Oxford. So this is not messing around. So it's a study of 9 healthy male volunteers. A single dose of 600 milligrams of CBD significantly reduced blood pressure. Researchers at Nottingham and Oxford discovered.
Dude, I did this one in my own ass, which is even more important to me than Oxford.
I understand this is for the other people, not your ass.
Thank you for clarifying.
Well, I'm just backing it up. I'm backing the study up with some, local stuff.
Literally backing it up.
Well, I meant my entire body, but okay.
Sorry, I puns.
I'm a firm believer in humor lowers your blood pressure as well.
All right, update on Tasha's son from Young Visionary 1985. He says he's been in a coma for 4 months, was attacked by another inmate. He was in jail for having 65 pounds in his trunk, supposedly in 2013. Supposedly. Damn, that sucks. I'm bummed out for the 65 pounds, and I am bummed out that he had to spend even a day in jail for that. Florist. Imagine if that was 65 pounds of roses, how absurd that would sound.
If the cops turned in 65 pounds, I wonder how much was actually there. Because, I've never seen them do anything honest with regards to seizing pot and arresting somebody yet. And I don't expect them to anytime soon.
True. Well, you know what? I'm telling you, I feel pretty good about today's episode. Alex said he was going to come back maybe next week. I'm going to invite Guild next week. I'll make sure Tony's in the room, try to get Chimera in here. John, you can come back and talk about, just get this conversation again going about the terpenes and the testing, and all of this stuff to me is wonderful. I'm always excited to learn more. And that's one of the reasons I do this every week, is so I can sit and listen to you guys and learn more. So give thanks everyone on the panel that was here. Mr. Todd McCormick, Johnny B, Skunkman Sam, D420K, Alec from SC Labs, Mark Schaldone, who popped in just for a short time, and of course Etienne, Skunkman Sam, and Indra, who are in the room now. And me, the Bubble Man. Always happy to spend my Sunday afternoons and mornings with you all. And we'll see you tomorrow for the Wake and Bake episode. I don't even know. It climbs much faster than Hash Church. I think it's around 69 now. So maybe something Jimi Hendrix tomorrow. What if 6 were a 9? I'll leave you with that. Peace out, everybody. Thanks for watching Hash Church.
So long, guys.